Chapter 307. Go to Watch Network. After Li Yundong finished speaking with a smile, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin both looked at him in confusion. Wan Hongling asked curiously, "Do you have a grudge against him?" Li Yundong chuckled and said, "It's not a grudge, but this guy is rich and heartless. He's a bastard. Go to see. 7KOM. /OM/ As he spoke, Su Chan, who was beside him, took over the conversation and rushed to tell them what had happened before, especially when she mentioned that Zheng Yuming had sold a roughly built house. Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and Wan Hongling said angrily in unison, "Damn it." Su Chan also said that Li Yundong had destroyed Zheng Yuming's building with one punch. Zi Yuan raised her eyebrows and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, but she looked at Li Yundong speechlessly. Zhou Qin smiled and looked at Li Yundong with admiration in her eyes. Wan Hongling clapped her hands and laughed loudly, saying, "Well done. If it were me, I would also go and tear down this bird building." Li Yundong said with a smile, "Speaking of which, I was afraid that he would come to us at first, but then there was no movement, so I forgot about it. Logically speaking, shouldn't Zheng Yuming be locked up after such a thing happened?" Zhou Qin snorted and said, "This kind of rich and heartless guy must have his own background to get away. Maybe he can't do real estate anymore, so he changed his business to tea." Li Yundong waved the leaflet in his hand and said, "I was wondering why the Tai Guanyin party was everywhere in my QQ group. It turns out that this guy is behind it." Li Yundong turned to look at Zi Yuan with a smile and said, "Jinren Zi Yuan, what do you think? Do me a favor and do me a favor. It would be a waste not to earn money from this guy." Zi Yuan thought for a moment and smiled helplessly. "How can we cultivators get involved in this kind of thing? If it gets out, people will laugh at us." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Didn't you say that in this colorful world, the 3,000 living beings are just fleeting clouds to you? Since it's fleeting clouds, you shouldn't care about other people's rumors." Hearing this, Zi Yuan's heart skipped a beat. She thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. "Okay." Wan Hongling immediately cheered. "Hooray! We don't have to live on the streets anymore." Zi Yuan looked at her with a mixture of anger and amusement. She pretended to be angry and said, "You are a cultivator. Look at you, what's the difference between you and a child? I only promised to participate in the competition, but I didn't promise to get first place." Li Yundong smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. I have confidence in you." Zhou Qin said cautiously, "That's not necessarily true. What Jinren Zi Yuan said makes sense. Since they dare to host such an event and offer such a high bonus, it's very likely that they have already bribed the judges and referees." Watch Net. 7KOM. If it were me, I would spend money to bribe all these people, and then secretly manipulate the competition to let my people get first place. In the end, the 2 million would still fall into my pocket. I would also use social resources and eye-catching effects to advertise myself for free. This analysis made Li Yundong and the others gasp. Li Yundong said, "Damn it, this move is too shameless." "But Zhou Qin, what you said is very possible." Wan Hongling was so angry that she shouted, "Shameless! Shameless beyond belief! This is a blatant unspoken rule." Su Chan said with a face full of doubt, "Then what should we do? How much is the bonus for the second place? Shall we get second place?" Li Yundong laughed and pinched the little girl's pink cheek. "You fool, the second place is only worth nearly 300,000 yuan. The gap between the first and second places is so big. It would have been fine if Zhou Qin hadn't said it just now, but now that she has said it and looked at the gap between the bonuses, I can feel that there is something fishy about it. However, I think we can still try to fight for it. Maybe the judge's eyes are sharp. Besides, even if we don't get first place, it's not bad to get second place." 300,000 yuan is also good. Zi Yuan pondered for a while and said, that's right. Everything is planned by man and accomplished by God. If we don't do anything, we will definitely achieve nothing. However, since we are going to participate in the tea art competition, do you have a look at what is needed? Li Yundong thought for a moment and suddenly smiled bitterly. Anyway, the best tea leaves and a good tea set are still needed, right? I'm afraid we will have to spend money to buy these things. Sigh, as the saying goes, if you want to make money, you must first have money. This is really a wise saying. Su Chan also sighed. Yeah, where are we going to get money now? These top-grade tea leaves and tea sets are very, very expensive. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan in surprise. Oh. You know about this? The little girl was unhappy. She stomped her feet and said angrily, don't look down on me. I was the one who taught you how to cultivate. Li Yundong laughed, rubbed the girl's hair, and said dotingly, okay, my girl is the best. Watch net. Only then did the little girl's anger turn into joy, and she beamed with joy. Zi Yuan looked at the two of them laughing and smiled slightly. It was as if she was in this pure and warm atmosphere of love. She also felt very quiet and peaceful. After a while, she said, in fact, you don't have to worry about top-grade tea leaves and top-grade tea sets. There is a set of top-grade tea sets and some top-grade Huangshan Maofeng tea in the cave residence of the Linggong sect. Li Yundong asked curiously, Huangshan Maofeng? What kind of tea is this? I've never heard of it. I've only heard of Tiguanyin, Biluakun, and so on. Wan Hongling laughed and said, you have no experience. Tiguanyin and Biluakun are like BMW and Volkswagen in cars. There are ordinary grades and top-grade grades. Because there are more ordinary grades, the production is also more, so everyone is familiar with them. However, in the heyday of Huangshan Maofeng in history, only a few hundred loads were produced a year. Although this tea is not famous, in fact, it is the Rolls-Royce of tea leaves. At an auction not long ago, 50 grams of Huangshan Maofeng were sold for a sky-high price of 85,000 yuan. Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air. 85,000 yuan for 50 grams. This price can be compared with gold. Wan Hongling snorted. Of course. Why else would Huangshan Maofeng be said to be the best of the best? I begged Sister Zi Yuan to make this tea for me last time, but she was unwilling to give it to me. You are really lucky. Li Yundong smiled and said, I'm not a judge who drinks tea. Seeing that Wan Hongling was about to speak, Zi Yuan quickly glared at her and said, you only know how to show off here. Why don't you hurry back to the sect to get it? We'll go back to Tiannan City and wait for your news. Wan Hongling's face fell and she muttered, I'm the one running errands again. My legs are so thin. There's no benefit for me. I've learned all your lessons. Zi Yuan pretended to be angry and said, you're still talking. Wan Hongling quickly said, okay, I know I was wrong. I know I was wrong, okay. Before she left, she made a face at Li Yundong and then looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention, she turned into a blue light and flew up. She flew back to Mount Longhu at an extremely fast speed and returned to the cave residence. She searched around in the stone cave where Zi Yuan had secluded herself and found a sealed porcelain pot and a tea set. Wan Hongling chuckled and took out a small treasure pouch from her arms. She pinched the mouth of the pouch and it opened by itself. The mouth of the pouch emitted a colorful brilliance. Wan Hongling carefully put the teapot and the tea set in it, then closed the mouth of the pouch and hid the treasure pouch on her body. She stood up and walked out of the stone room. After she walked out of the stone room, she passed by the pond full of lotus flowers. She turned her head to take a look and saw that the two budding lotus flowers were already showing signs of blooming. The flowers were glowing, and she could vaguely see the figures of two little people curled up inside. Wan Hongling said to herself with a smile, "Good boy, I haven't seen you for a few days, but you've grown quite fast." She was about to turn around and leave when she suddenly heard footsteps coming from outside, followed by a woman shouting, "Seal this place." Wan Hongling was shocked and went out to take a look. She saw Zhou Ping and the Lady of the Earthly Fire, Zhang Ling, standing in front of the cave residence and loudly ordering the disciples of the Zhengyi school around. Wan Hongling saw that the disciples of the Zhengyi school were holding all kinds of seals and wooden boards in their hands. In the blink of an eye, the Taoist temple was covered with seals and even the door was nailed shut. She was shocked and angry. "What are you doing?" Zhou Ping snorted coldly and glanced at her, her eyes full of disdain. "What are you doing? Are you blind?" Wan Hongling was so angry that her whole body was trembling. "This is the place of our Linggong sect. How can you be so presumptuous?" Zhou Ping laughed loudly and said, "This is the place of our Zhengyi school. Why can't we be so presumptuous?" Wan Hongling was extremely angry and shouted, "It's fine if you freeze our accounts, but why do you have to seal our Taoist temple? Why are you doing this?" Zhou Ping laughed, took out a stack of photos from her sleeve, and threw them in front of Wan Hongling. Wan Hongling blocked it with her hand, and with a bang, the photos flew everywhere. Wan Hongling saw that these photos were all of Li Jiandong and Zi Yuan together. Wan Hongling suddenly became furious. "How dare you follow us?" Zhou Ping sneered and said, "If you don't want people to know, don't do it. The future leader of your Linggong sect doesn't know how to cherish herself and hang out with the leader of the Fox Zen school. Don't you know what shame is?" After that, she waved her arm and said, seal them all. Seal this filthy sect for me." Wan Hongling was so angry that she was about to move her hand. Just as she was about to take out her magical item, the Lady of the Earthly Fire pointed at her and shouted, "Tut!" Wan Hongling's body suddenly stiffened and she couldn't move for an instant. Zhou Ping waved her hand and said, "Seal the cave abode inside as well." At her order, the other disciples of the Zhengyi school rushed in one after another. The Lady of the Earthly Fire also walked in. At first glance, she saw the two budding lotus flowers in the lotus pond and immediately exclaimed in surprise, "These Bingdi flowers look exactly the same, and the 3 souls and 7 spirits of people in them are also exactly the same. This is really rare." Zhou Ping, who was standing to one side, had a fawning smile on her face. "Master, if you like them, just take them away. Anyway, wouldn't it be a waste to leave such good things in the Linggong sect?" The Lady of the Earthly Fire chuckled. She was a little hesitant because she was worried about her pride. However, Zhou Ping simply waved her hand and lifted the 2 Bingdi lotuses up along with the soil. She held them in the air with Jinqi and said with a smile, "Master, wouldn't it be better if we took them back to the Zhengyi school to recuperate?" The Lady of the Earthly Fire chuckled and looked at the 2 Bingdi lotuses with joy. She nodded and praised, "Good, good. Your Shirbua's Sanju formation just happens to lack 2 sword spirits with great spiritual qi. I think when they grow up, they can be the sword spirits of the left and right protectors." She held the pair of Bingdi lotuses in her hands. The more she looked at them, the more she loved them. Ignoring the other disciples of the Linggong sect who were sealing the Bingdi lotuses, she turned into a burst of blue light and flew out. Wan Hongling watched helplessly as the Linggong sect was sealed and the Bingdi lotuses she had cultivated for a long time were taken away. She was so angry that she went crazy. By the time she broke through the shackles and could move again, the disciples of the Zhengyi school had already left. She rushed to the gate of the Taoist temple of the Zhengyi school on Mount Longhu like a madwoman. Just as she was about to rush forward, she suddenly stopped and stared at the strict Taoist gate with hatred in her eyes. She bit her lips so hard that they bled. She gritted her teeth for a long time before stomping her feet angrily, turning into a beam of blue light and leaving, // 785462789541. Chapter 308. Go to Watch Network. Ruan Hongling went all the way back to Tiannan City. When she returned to Li Yundong's home in Hongqing New Area, Li Yundong and the others were chatting and laughing in the room. Go to see net. 7 K.O.M. Ruan Hongling rushed into the house from the balcony. As soon as she landed, she burst into tears and threw herself into Zi Yuan's arms. Li Yundong, Zi Yuan, and the others were shocked and stood up one after another. What's wrong? Normally, Zi Yuan would have scolded Ruan Hongling for not being able to control her emotions as a cultivator. But at this time, she saw Ruan Hongling crying her heart out and her expression full of anger and grievance. It was obvious that she had been humiliated. Zi Yuan's heart tightened. She held Ruan Hongling's shoulder with both hands and asked in a deep voice, "Hongling, what happened?" Ruan Hongling cried and told them what had happened. The others immediately became furious. Li Yundong said angrily, "The Zhenyi school has gone too far. They are simply riding on our necks and defecating." Zhou Qin's face was as cold as frost. She didn't speak, but her eyes were fixed on Li Yundong, as if waiting for his decision. Su Chan also said angrily, "Is this the so-called righteous sect? How can they be so overbearing and dirty? What's the difference between them and bandits?" Li Yundong cursed for a while. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned to ask Zi Yuan, "By the way, when did you take in the souls of Deng Yu and Deng Jiao? Why didn't I know about this? The bastards of the Zhenyi school actually took away their reborn souls. If anything happens to them, I won't forgive them." Although the others were filled with righteous indignation, Zi Yuan still looked very calm. She thought for a while and said, "We'll talk about this later. Although the Zhenyi school is overbearing, they are not evil devils. I know the temper and character of the Lady of the Earthly Fire. She is unyielding, but she is still a decent person. She won't do anything to these sisters. I heard that Celestial Master Zhang, the leader of the Zhenyi school, has been trying to rebuild the Three Jades formation. The Three Jades formation consumes a lot of manpower and material resources, and it needs two powerful and psychic sword spirits. I guess the Lady of the Earthly Fire may be interested in them, so she took them to cultivate them into sword spirits." Speaking of this, Zi Yuan sighed slightly. If that's the case, it's an unexpected blessing for them. Ruan Hongling raised her head, her eyes filled with unwillingness and resentment. "Sister Zi Yuan, are you going to swallow this? They have sealed the entire Linggong sect." There was a hint of anger in Zi Yuan's eyes, but it was only for a moment. She said, "The reason why they sealed the Linggong sect was to force me to bow my head. Now, there are undercurrents in the cultivation world. The inner alchemy sect and the external alchemy sect are constantly fighting. On the surface, the six sects and the Zhenyi school are cooperating, but in fact, they are secretly fighting for the leadership of the cultivation world." Watch net. 7 K.O.M. At present, the six sects have united, and their power is comparable to that of the Zhenyi school, so they want to annex our Linggong sect to strengthen the Zhenyi school. Zi Yuan sneered. If they can seal the Linggong sect, how can they seal the mouths of the cultivators in the world? Hongling, it's right that you didn't go to them directly. Otherwise, you would have fallen into their trap. In our current situation, if we go to the Zhenyi school, it will be like hitting a stone with an egg. At the moment, we can only swallow our anger and endure humiliation. In half a year, our Linggong sect will hold a succession ceremony for the leader. This ceremony will be held by the Zhenyi school. At that time, in order to legitimately annex us, the Zhenyi school will definitely send out golden invitations and invite the leaders of the cultivation sects in the world to attend. At that time, we can ask the leaders of the world to uphold justice for us. After hearing this, Li Yundong immediately said, "I don't dare to say anything else, but I, Li Yundong, will be the first to support you. Our Fox Zen school will also fully support you. Su Chan had always been very grateful to Zi Yuan for her help to Li Yundong. She had guided Li Yundong on the path of cultivation, but Zi Yuan was the one who had helped him achieve success. Without Zi Yuan, Li Yundong would not have such great shentong. She also nodded vigorously and said, Sister Zi Yuan, I also support you. Zhou Qin opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she felt that she was too weak to do so. She didn't know how to cultivate or how to use shentong, so she swallowed her words, but there was a resolute look in her eyes. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, I appreciate your kindness, but if you support our Lingong sect so blatantly, it will be the right time to confirm their crimes. Wan Hongling jumped up and said angrily, let's do it. They can do it, but we can't. Li Yundong also said unhappily, it's precisely because the world says that the Fox Zen school is a place that hides evil, that I have to make great efforts to rectify the Fox Zen school and turn it into a famous righteous sect. People are not born bad people. Even if they are bad people, can't they be good people in the future? Seeing that Li Yundong was angry, Zi Yuan smiled apologetically at him and said, you're right. I was being paranoid. Only then did Li Yundong's anger turn into joy. That's right. Don't worry. I will definitely stand up for you at the inauguration ceremony of the leader in half a year. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and thought to herself, Li Yundong has only been cultivating for half a year. Although he is already a first-class master of the younger generation, there is still a big gap between him and the cultivators of the older generation. At that time, I have to find a way to persuade him not to stand up. Otherwise, he will be besieged by the leaders of the various sections. That will be unimaginable. Kai 98 When 1 Shui 0 Net 6 Zi Yuan had made up her mind and stopped mentioning this matter. She turned to Wan Hongling and said, let's put this matter aside for the time being. Right now, solving the problem of food, clothing, housing, and transportation is the biggest problem. Let's go to the net. Have you brought the tea and tea set? Wan Hongling wiped her tears, took out a small treasure pouch, and tore it gently. Li Yundong and the others saw a mass of colorful light emerge. Wan Hongling reached out to explore the light, and then took out a teapot and a tea set. Li Yundong saw that the tea set was made of purple sand, which looked very imposing. The teapot looked ordinary. He asked, how long have the tea leaves been in it? Are they unlucky? Wan Hongling was so angry that she rolled her eyes at Li Yundong. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. This is a porcelain pot sealed by Sister Zi Yuan with her spiritual power. The top-grade Huangshan Maofeng inside will still be fine even if it has been kept for 2 years. Li Yundong didn't take her words seriously. He laughed and said, then let's discuss it now. When the time comes, we need to have a rule. As he said this, he turned to look at Zi Yuan and asked, do you need anyone to help you with the tea art competition? Zi Yuan thought for a moment and said, I don't need anyone's help. I alone am enough. Li Yundong smiled and said, well, we'll cheer for you from below the stage. Wan Hongling couldn't help but ridicule him again. Idiot, do you think you're watching a sports competition? How dare you cheer for me? The tea art performance is an art that combines movement and stillness. It pays attention to watching and tasting. Li Yundong knew that her sect had encountered misfortune, so he didn't argue with her. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, Zhenren Ruan is very knowledgeable. I admire you. Wan Hongling raised her head and said, of course. Li Yundong said to Su Chan and Zhou Qin, hurry up and take a rest. We'll go to Dongwu City before dawn tomorrow morning. After Li Yundong finished speaking, Su Chan and Zhou Qin returned to their respective rooms. Fortunately, Li Yundong's room was quite large, with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Su Chan slept in one room, and Zhou Qin slept in another. Ruan Hongling and Zi Yuan went back to their own rooms, while Li Yundong was still meditating and practicing qi in the living room. It was not until 4 o'clock in the morning that Li Yundong woke up from his meditation. He exhaled a long breath and let out a soft groan. Although his long groan was not loud, Zi Yuan heard it immediately and woke up from her meditation. She walked to the living room and said with a smile, as the saying goes, the law is based on wealth, companions, and tools. People without money often have no heart to cultivate. You are living a peaceful life. So many people's food, clothing, and shelter are on your shoulders, but you are not worried at all. You are still so diligent in cultivation. Li Yundong chuckled and said, the chairman said it well. When a man dies, he will face the sky. If he doesn't die, he will live for thousands of years. As the saying goes, there will always be a way out. Zi Yuan looked astonished. What chairman said that? Li Yundong chuckled and said, prostitute. Zi Yuan was shocked. Prostitute also said that. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, chairman of the Mao Film Committee. Zi Yuan almost vomited blood. She rolled her eyes at Li Yundong and said, I'm going to wash up. At this time, Ruan Hongling, Su Chan, and the others also woke up when they heard the conversation between Li Yundong and Zi Yuan. Only Zhou Qin woke up last. She looked drowsy, but the yuan qi in her body was extremely strong. After a while, she was full of energy again. After washing up, they flew to Dongwu City before dawn. On the way, Li Yundong took Zhou Qin with him and said with a smile, fortunately, I can fly around. Otherwise, I would have vomited blood just for the ticket. Zhou Qin admired the magnificent rivers and mountains of her motherland in the sky and sighed. I didn't expect that one day I would be able to fly in the sky. Li Yundong smiled softly and said, one day, you will be able to fly alone. Zhou Qin looked at him with a smile, but in her heart, she thought, I hope you can always fly with me. By the time Li Yundong and the others arrived in Dongwu City, it was already 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. According to the venue of the competition on the flyer, Li Yundong went straight to the Workers' Cultural Palace in Dongwu City. The Workers' Cultural Palace of Dongwu City was located next to Renmin Road on the main line. There was a large square inside, surrounded by rockery, strange rocks, flowers, and trees. The environment was very elegant. Li Yundong glanced around and pointed to an obvious registration place. He smiled and said, I found it. It's over there. Li Yundong led everyone to the registration place. When the lady at the registration place saw them coming over, she took the initiative to smile and said, hello, are you going to sign up for the competition? Li Yundong nodded with a smile. Of course. The lady looked at Li Yundong for a while, then looked at Su Chan, Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and Ruan Hongling behind him. She was secretly amazed and asked, may I ask if you are participating in the competition as an individual or as a company? Li Yundong asked, is there any difference between the two? The lady smiled and said, in fact, there's no difference. It's just that if I participate as an individual, I will definitely suffer more than if I participate as a company. At that time, the organizer will find a souvenir for those who participate as individuals but don't get a place, but if I participate as a company, I won't get one. Li Yundong smiled and said, I see. We are participating as individuals. The lady asked again, then who wants to sign up for the competition? Zi Yuan said lightly, me. The young lady looked at her carefully and was secretly shocked by Zi Yuan's elegant temperament. She thought to herself, the appearance of the person performing the tea art is secondary. The temperament is the most important. A person with a good temperament can obviously add a lot of points to the competition. I wonder how this beauty's tea art is. She noted down Zi Yuan's name and asked, then what kind of tea do you want to participate in the competition? Zi Yuan said, Huangshan Maofeng. The lady was shocked. Huangshan Maofeng. Can I have a look at it? Zi Yuan said lightly, it's my top-grade Huangshan Maofeng. Even if I open the jar for one more second, it will lose a bit of immortal qi. I won't open it until the competition begins. As she said this, she glanced at the lady and said, What, you don't believe me? The lady was shocked by Zi Yuan's temperament and confidence. How could she not say anything? She had no choice but to fill in the words Huangshan Maofeng on the form. After asking Zi Yuan a few more questions, she took advantage of the opportunity that Li Yundong and Zi Yuan were talking to turn her head and say to a waiter next to her, Go and tell the boss that there's a master here. After a while, Zheng Yuming came out with a hot and beautiful woman in his arms. He shouted, Master. Where is the master? At that moment, a waiter quietly pointed at Li Yundong and the others. Zheng Yuming looked over, but he didn't see Zi Yuan at first. Instead, he saw Li Yundong at a glance. This only scared him so much that his legs trembled and he almost fell to the ground. Since the collapse of Zheng Yuming's building last time, Zheng Yuming had paid a great price to get out of it. After that, he thought about it bitterly and thought that it was Li Yundong who had brought him bad luck. The first time he saw this brat, his beautiful mistress ran away. The second time he saw this brat, his building collapsed. Damn it, now I'm seeing this scourge again. What's even more hateful is that this time, this guy has actually formed a group to harm me. Does he think he's playing an online game? //7854627895541 Chapter 309 Go to Watch Network. Zheng Yuming's heart trembled when he saw Li Yundong, especially when he saw Zi Yuan, who was participating in the competition. He was even more shocked and couldn't help but compare her with the beauty in his arms. Go to see. The beauty in his arms was also a rare beauty. She was like a prostitute in bed and a lady out of bed. What was even more commendable was that her tea skills were extremely exquisite. She could be said to be excellent in both beauty and skill. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been willing to spend so much money to organize such an event. On the one hand, it was to advertise his tea, and on the other hand, it was to promote the beauty in his arms. But now, it seemed that compared with the beauty in front of him, Zheng Yuming suddenly felt that he was not hugging a phoenix, but a chicken. It was true that comparisons were odious, and goods had to be thrown away. Zheng Yuming suddenly felt very upset. He whispered a few words to a staff member next to him. The staff member nodded, then walked to the lady at the registration desk and fetched the information of Li Yundong and the others. When Zheng Yuming saw it, he was shocked again. The best Huangshan Maofeng. The beautiful woman next to him craned her head to take a look and was also shocked. This is good tea. I'm afraid that your Tai Guanyin can't suppress it. Zheng Yuming squinted at her and said, If my tea can't suppress it, can you, the tea lady, suppress it? As he said this, he signaled Zi Yuan with his eyes. The beautiful woman glanced at Zi Yuan and snorted sourly. You like it? Then go to her. Why are you looking for me? As she said this, she was about to break free from his arms and leave. Zheng Yuming quickly smiled and said, Oh, don't be angry. You know that I only have you in my heart. Only then did the tea lady's anger turn into joy. She said angrily, You men are all greedy. Humph, I know it best. I don't care. You have to guarantee that I will get first place, or I won't let you off. Zheng Yuming smiled bitterly to himself. Oh my God, don't you see that she is determined to win? Even the top-grade Yellow Mountain Maofeng was brought out. If the difference in strength between the two sides was too great, and the people weren't blind, wouldn't the audience scold me to death if I blatantly manipulated the match? Do you think you're living a good life because of me? In the end, aren't we just going to suffer together? The tea lady looked at Zi Yuan. Although she didn't know how good Zi Yuan's tea skills were, just looking at her otherworldly temperament, her heart was beating like a drum. This temperament can't be faked. How could she dare to go to Liangshan without some ability? I'm afraid she has some talent. The tea lady looked worried. What should we do? Could it be that you want to benefit others? Zheng Yuming snorted. How can I let the fertile water flow to an outsider's field? Of course I have the final say in my territory. This bastard always spoils my plans. How can I let him have his way this time? He beckoned to a staff member next to him and whispered something in his ear. The staff member nodded and walked into the hall. After a while, a man and a woman came out of the hall. Watch net. 7 KOM. The man was about 40 or 50 years old, dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He appeared to be in high spirits and had an extraordinary bearing. The woman looked to be in her 20s. Although her appearance was ordinary, her eyes were sharp and her eyebrows were filled with arrogance. When Zheng Yuming saw the two of them, he immediately smiled. He shook hands with the middle-aged man and said, "Manager Zhong, I need your help this time." Manager Zhong smiled slightly. "Don't mention it. We will often cooperate together in the future. If you need anything, just let me know." Zheng Yuming said with a smile, "Just now, a contestant was extraordinary and chose the top-grade Yellow Mountain Maofeng tea." Before he could finish his words, Manager Zhong laughed and said, "The top-grade Yellow Mountain Maofeng tea? Huh, Manager Zheng, congratulations. Your advertisement is very good. It seems that even real tea merchants have been attracted. Is that why you are worried? But I remember that you have a lot of Taiping monkey kuei in your collection. This is the king of tea. You don't need my help." Zheng Yuming smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "No matter how good the tea is, it needs an expert to brew it. Manager Zhong, don't make fun of me. Take a look for yourself." As he spoke, he pointed to Zi Yuan, who was not far away. When Manager Zhong looked over, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly exchanged glances with the female companion next to him. The female companion also looked at him in surprise, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. Seeing their strange expressions, Zheng Yuming quickly asked, "What's wrong? Do you know her?" Manager Zhong chuckled and said, "We do have some friendship." "What do you mean, Manager Zheng?" Zheng Yuming asked tentatively, "Since you and she are old acquaintances, why don't you persuade her to withdraw from this competition?" "Well." Manager Zhong thought for a moment. After a while, he said, "Well, I'll give it a try. But this woman has a powerful background. I'm not sure if I can win." Zheng Yuming smiled and said, "There's a way. Since we are friends, don't hurt our friendship." Manager Zhong smiled and walked over to Zi Yuan and the others. When he got close, he greeted them and said, "It's really rare for Zhenren Zi Yuan of the Lingdong sect of the Jingyi school to come to this small tea art competition." Zi Yuan turned around and looked over. She was immediately moved and said, "Zhong Qingsong, the abbess of the Pine Valley Nunnery in Mount Huangshan. Why are you here too?" Her eyes subconsciously fell on the woman next to Zhong Qingsong. "Are you also here to participate in the competition?" Zhong Qingsong chuckled and said, "I'm just a partner of the organizer. Why does Zhenren Zi Yuan have the leisure to participate in such a small competition?" As he said this, he looked at Li Yundong and asked, "This is?" Zi Yuan smiled and said, "This is Li Yundong, the current leader of the Fox Zen School. This is my shimmy, Wan Hongling. This is Su Chan of the Fox Zen School, and this is Li Yundong's eldest disciple, Zhou Qin." Zhong Qingsong listened to her calmly introduce Li Yundong. He couldn't help but be shocked. He was shocked that the cultivation world had been talking about a young man who had forced the 6 great sects to return without success in Mount Tianlong these days. He hadn't expected that this person would appear in front of him. He was shocked that Zi Yuan, who had always been proud and aloof, was actually in cahoots with the leader of the Fox Zen school. Zhong Qingsong subconsciously looked at Li Yundong. He saw that the boy in front of him had a peaceful face, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and there was a hidden smile on his face. He had an extraordinary bearing between his eyebrows, and his eyes were bright and deep. Go to the internet. 7KOM/OM/ His heart trembled and he thought to himself, he looks like a capable person, but it's a pity that he didn't take the right path. While Zhong Qingsong was looking at Li Yundong, the young woman next to him was also looking at Li Yundong. Seeing that there were no ordinary people around, she asked bluntly, "Are you Li Yundong?" Li Yundong was neither humble nor arrogant. He nodded and said, "Yes." The young woman looked at Su Chan next to him and then at Zhou Qin. In her heart, she classified him as a lecher. She curled her lips and said, "It said that your Shintong is amazing and you are good at fighting. You forced back the siege of the 6 great sects by yourself." Li Yundong smiled slightly and said, "I was just lucky." The young woman snorted and said, "I think you were lucky. That's because I didn't go. Otherwise, how could you have stood up for me?" After she finished speaking, Su Chan immediately retorted, "Yes, you must have known about the limelight in advance, so you deliberately didn't go. When the matter was over, you jumped out and said it after the fact." Wan Hongling was also angry in her heart. Where did this guy come from? He's like a yawning toad. What a big tone. What does he think of my sister Zi Yuan? Wan Hongling couldn't help but sneer, who doesn't know how to say it? I just don't know if he has any real ability. The young woman glanced at them proudly and said disdainfully, "How dare a 3-tailed fox spirit and a little cultivator who hasn't even cultivated the supreme yang qi be so arrogant?" Su Chan and Wan Hongling were both furious. Just as they were about to speak, Li Yundong stopped them and winked at them. Zhong Qingsong also turned his head and shouted in a low voice, "Qing'er." The young woman named Qing'er snorted and turned her head away. Her nose was in the air, and her face was full of arrogance. Zhong Qingsong smiled at Zi Yuan and said, "This is my disciple. She has been spoiled by me and is a little proud. Please excuse her." Zi Yuan smiled faintly and said, "It doesn't matter. It's normal for young people to be arrogant." Qing'er glanced at her and suddenly asked, "Are you very old? Why do you speak like an old man?" Li Yundong saw that the young woman's words were a little presumptuous and unruly, and she didn't know any etiquette at all. He frowned and said without waiting for Zi Yuan to speak, "Jinren Zhong, what can I do for you? If there's nothing else, we'll take our leave first." Zhong Qingsong saw that the other women in their group, including Zi Yuan, were all following Li Yundong's lead. As soon as he spoke, the others fell silent. He was secretly amazed. Zhong Qingsong glanced at Li Yundong, turned his head, and said to Zi Yuan with a smile, "Well, I won't lie in front of a Jinren. I heard that Jinren Zi Yuan is also participating in this tea art competition, so I want to come over and ask for some face. I hope that Jinren Zi Yuan can give me some face." Zi Yuan smiled and said, "What's the matter? If it's convenient, we will help each other." Zhong Qingsong smiled and said, "That's great. If Jinren Zi Yuan can withdraw from the competition, I will owe you a favor." As soon as he finished speaking, the expressions of Su Chan and Wan Hongling suddenly changed. Li Yundong and Zhou Qin looked angry, and Zi Yuan also frowned slightly and asked, "Why do you want me to withdraw from the competition?" Zhong Qingsong smiled and said, "Because the organizer of this time is also my partner. In order not to hurt everyone's friendship, I think it's better for Jinren Zi Yuan to withdraw from the competition." His words were polite, but there was a hint of command and threat in them. Zi Yuan's face was as dark as water. She didn't say anything and just looked at Li Yundong. Li Yundong snorted in his heart and said, "Jinren Zhong, do you mean that since you have already intervened in this matter, this is the meat in your mouth, and others can't touch it?" Zhong Qingsong smiled politely, but he replied, "Jinren, you're too serious, but that's what I mean." Li Yundong had been planning for the matter in front of him for a long time. When it came to the last minute, how could he be willing to give in? He laughed and said angrily, "Then if you touch everything, won't everyone in the world want to live?" Zhong Qingsong looked at Zi Yuan with a cold expression and said, "Jinren Zi Yuan, what do you think?" The implication of his words was, "I'm asking Zi Yuan, and you, Li Yundong, should stop." Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, "Jinren Li's meaning is my meaning." Zhong Qingsong's expression changed, and Qing'er, who was beside him, sneered and said, "Master, what's there to say to this self-deprecating guy? Let her participate in the competition. When the time comes, I will also participate. I want to see Jinren Zi Yuan's ability." Wan Hongling couldn't help but say angrily, "Watch your mouth." Qing'er snorted and said, "What? You can do it, but I can't say it." Now in the cultivation world, who doesn't know that Jinren Zi Yuan has abandoned herself and mingled with the people of the Fox Zen school? The 6 sects are in an uproar now. They all feel that they have been deceived and are discussing how to make trouble for you. I think, Jinren Zi Yuan, if you have time to join in the fun, you'd better think of a way to protect yourself first. As she said this, she glanced at Li Yundong again with a look of disdain. As for you, since you are so greedy and lustful, you should take your fox spirit and find a cave to hide in and live a good life. What are you doing out here? Do you really think of yourself as an invincible great cultivator? Qing'er's words made Li Yundong angry in his heart, but at this time, in public, he couldn't do anything. His face was indifferent, and no one could see any clues. He made a gesture to stop Wan Hongling and Su Chan, who were about to curse. Without looking at Qing'er, he said coldly to Zhong Qingsong, "Go and tell your friend from the organizer that I will take his 2 million yuan. You are a piece of meat near the mouth of a tiger. I, Li Yundong, will take it this time." After that, he turned around and left. As soon as Li Yundong left, Zhou Qin immediately turned around and followed him. Su Chan and Wan Hongling glared at Zhong Qingsong and Qing'er at the same time, then turned around and followed Li Yundong. Zi Yuan opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she sighed helplessly and followed them. Zhong Qingsong glanced at Qing'er helplessly and said, "You really can't control your mouth. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have brought you out. Now, you have offended the cultivators of 2 sects. Qing'er snorted and said, "It's nothing. I learned tea art from my master when I was a child. It's an ancestral skill. Why should I be afraid of her? Besides, now that the Zhenyi school has sealed the Lingdong sect, this matter has spread like wildfire. Zi Yuan is just a stray dog. What's there to be afraid of? As for Li Yundong, he is just a greedy and lustful person. What's so great about him?" Although Zhong Qingsong scolded her verbally, he felt that Qing'er was right in his heart. After saying a few words, he didn't take this matter to heart anymore. After Li Yundong and the others left the workers' cultural palace in anger, the 2 little girls, Wan Hongling and Su Chan, couldn't help but curse one after another, "You be ****, you really have no manners." Su Chan was so angry that her cheeks puffed up. "I'm so angry. Yundong, you have to teach her a good lesson." Li Yundong snorted and said, "She is a female cultivator. How can I teach her a lesson? If I win, it will be an unfair victory. If I lose, others will say that I bullied her." Zi Yuan sighed and said, "Actually, we can take a step back." Li Yundong turned his head and said angrily, "Take a step back? Which step would be the end? If I can take a step back today, I can take a step back tomorrow. If you don't have a diamond, don't take on this porcelain work." Since they dared to open this challenge, they should be mentally prepared to be challenged. I want to see what kind of ability this arrogant woman has. Zi Yuan, if you don't want to participate in the competition, I won't stop you. Teach me tea skills, and I'll participate. Zi Yuan sighed and said, look at how angry you are. You can actually cultivate to such a level. You're really an anomaly. Li Yundong laughed angrily and said, Li Yundong, only pay attention to 4 words in cultivation, the state of mind is not hindered. I don't think I'm a person who causes trouble. I don't take the initiative to bully others, but if others take the initiative to bully me, I will definitely not let them have a good time. Zi Yuan, I think you are too modest, making others think that you are weak and easy to bully. Now that your sect is declining, everyone is stepping on your head. I'm so angry just by looking at it. How can you bear it? Ruan Hongling, who was standing to one side, felt like a confidant. She nodded vigorously and said loudly, Li Yundong, you finally said something reasonable today. Li Yundong glared at her and was so angry that he laughed. He scolded her with a smile, I don't think what you said is reasonable. After being scolded by Li Yundong, not only did Zi Yuan not feel angry, but she felt strange in her heart. She smiled helplessly and said, you are really overbearing. Li Yundong laughed and said, overbearing? Didn't you notice just now? The more modest you are, the more others think you are weak and easy to bully. External alchemy has the Chinese medicine business, so it doesn't allow others to point fingers. This Pine Valley cottage of Mount Huangshan has some tea business, but it actually wants us to withdraw from the competition. What a joke. They don't want us to walk. That's good, then I'll snatch all of their paths and make them have nowhere to go, comma, / 7854627895541. Chapter 310. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's words made Zi Yuan a little absent-minded for a moment. Ever since she had seen the shadow of her master in this boy, she had been subconsciously chasing after the shadow of her master in this boy. But now it seemed that he and her master were really 2 different kinds of people. Go to watch net. 7 KOM 113 Shui 4 net. Her master was modest, gentle, and tolerant, while the boy in front of her was jumping up and down, hating evil as his enemy. For a moment, Zi Yuan's eyes were a little confused. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong thought that Zi Yuan didn't want to participate in the competition, so he said, Zi Yuan, I know you have difficulties. If you don't want to participate in the competition, I won't force you. Hearing this, Zi Yuan suddenly woke up as if she had just woken up from a dream. She smiled and said, who said I don't want to? Li Yundong was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. He laughed and said, are you willing? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, tea art is not like other things. It can't be learned in a few days. Moreover, it will be very embarrassing for a man like you to go up and perform tea art. Li Yundong laughed and said, if you are willing to participate, there is no need for me to go up and embarrass myself. Although Su Chan and Wan Hongling didn't get along with each other, at this time, the 2 of them could be said to have a common enemy. Seeing that Zi Yuan had agreed to participate in the competition, they were both overjoyed. Even Zhou Qin, who had always been cold, couldn't help but smile. A few days later, the first China Tea Culture Challenge tournament began in the square of the Workers' Cultural Palace in Dongwu City. When Li Yundong and the others arrived in groups, they saw lanterns and streamers everywhere, and the crowd was surging. There were reporters holding cameras and cameras everywhere, snapping away at the sexy waitresses and elegant tea attendants. Many Furlan were murdered in an instant. Li Yundong was a little surprised. There are so many people. Su Chan was a crazy person. She was excited when she saw the lively scene. She cheered and clapped her hands. It's so lively. Yundong, when will we go up? Li Yundong looked around and saw that there were many manufacturers participating in the competition on the side. There were beautiful etiquette girls holding up all kinds of tea and manufacturer signs. People like them, who had participated in the competition in private capacities, were like scorpions defecating. Li Yundong smiled and said, I don't know. There should be a draw later, right? Zhou Qin looked around and said in a deep voice, a lot of famous teas have arrived. Look over there, there's the Westlake Longjing, which is known as one of the top 10 teas in China. There's also the Dongting Bilyuakun, which is known as the frightening fragrance. Next to it is the Junshan Silver Needle, which is known as the golden inlaid jade. Next to the silver needle is the Yunnan Pu'er tea, which is known as the edible antique tea. Zhou Qin looked at them one by one. Suddenly, her expression changed and she said in a low voice, Li Yundong, look. Li Yundong looked in the direction of her finger and saw that Qing'er, the arrogant disciple of Zhong Qingsong, was also participating in the competition. However, although they were cultivators from the Pine Valley Cottage in Mount Huangshan, they didn't choose the tea leaves of Mount Huangshan. Instead, they chose Wui de Hong Pao. Li Yundong knew little about tea, so he asked in confusion, what's wrong with this? Su Chan explained to him with a smile, this is the best tea. It's even more expensive than Huangshan Maofeng. I heard from my master that 20 grams of such top-grade de Hong Pao tea leaves can be sold for more than 100,000. Li Yundong couldn't help but be shocked. What? Doesn't that mean that a sip of tea costs more than 100,000? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and said, tea culture has a long history. There are high-end tea leaves and low-end tea leaves. Anyone can afford to drink low-end tea leaves, but high-end tea leaves are the exclusive favorites of the rich. Go to the internet. 7 KOM. Now, there are only 4 de Hong Pao tea trees left on the steep precipice of the Nine Dragons' Nest. With such a small output of tea, it's naturally extraordinarily expensive. Li Yundong couldn't help sighing. F*CK, I'm a dignified cultivator, and I can't even support my own disciples. These B***stards can actually drink more than 100,000 in a sip of tea. What kind of world is this? Su Chan pulled Li Yundong's hand and said with a smile, I believe that you will make a lot of money in the future. I want to follow you and eat well. Li Yundong laughed and patted the girl's forehead. Well, I'll take your auspicious words. But you have to eat less. With your appetite, even a mountain of gold will make you poor. Su Chan immediately pouted and looked resentful. You haven't even made money yet, and you're already talking about me. You're so annoying. I clearly eat very little. Her innocent appearance made Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin smile. Li Yundong even laughed and rubbed her cheek. The group consisted of 1 man and 4 women. The man was handsome, and the women were beautiful. Each of them had a different temperament, and they immediately attracted the attention of many people. Many reporters and tourists took out their phones and cameras to take pictures of the group. Go to the internet. 7 KOM. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6 Li Yundong and the others were talking and laughing when they suddenly heard a surprised voice coming from the side. Beauty, I found you again. Li Yundong and the others turned their heads and saw a young and handsome boy shouting at Su Chan with a face full of ecstasy. Li Yundong looked and thought, hey, isn't this the rich second generation who chased after Su Chan in Shantang 7 Li? Why is this guy here? Wait, there's a girl standing next to him. She seems very familiar. Su Chan frowned and tugged at Li Yundong's sleeve. I see this guy again. He's so annoying. Why is he haunting me? Li Yundong only glanced at Xinyu, and then his eyes quickly fell on a girl next to him. The girl had her back to Li Yundong and was curiously taking photos with the SLR camera in her hand. When she turned her face, Li Yundong was shocked. Isn't this Shen Hui with a child's face and big breasts? Shen Hui turned around and saw Li Yundong at a glance. She was also shocked. Why are you here? Shen Yu glanced at Shen Hui, approached her, and asked curiously, "Sister, do you know this guy?" Shen Hui snorted. When she saw Shen Yu coming over, she glanced at him with disgust and quietly moved away from him. She sneered and said, "Of course I know him. We're old acquaintances." Oh. As she said this, she cast a malicious look at Li Yundong and smiled insincerely. Shen Hui looked at the beauties beside Li Yundong and sneered, "By the way, why are you here instead of staying in Tiannan City? Don't tell me you're also here to participate in the competition." Li Yundong thought of what had happened last time and felt a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, "What, you don't allow it?" Shen Hui smiled and said, "How could I dare not allow it? However, if you are really here to participate in the competition, then I will give you a chance. In front of so many people here, if you can clean my shoes, then I promise you that you will win first place. If you don't want to, I promise you that you will lose the competition." Li Yundong was proud and arrogant. How could he stand such a girl with such a temper? He immediately pulled a long face and said with a chuckle, "Why don't you kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times in front of so many people here? I will accept you as my disciple and not spank you. Otherwise, I will strip you naked and spank you. What do you think?" Shen Hui's face immediately turned pale and she was so angry that her whole body was trembling. "Li Yundong, don't be arrogant." Li Yundong sneered and said, "It seems that I'm not the arrogant one." Shen Yu rolled his eyes and asked Shen Hui in a low voice, "Sister, has this guy offended you?" Shen Hui glared at him and said, "It's none of your business." Shen Yu didn't care. For him, making trouble for Li Yundong was the thing he was most happy to do. It would be best to make this guy's face dirty, so that it would be more convenient for him to snatch his love away. Shen Yu smiled and looked like a playboy. He raised his chin and said to Li Yundong, "Hey, I advise you to go back quickly. Don't participate in this competition." Wan Hongling, who had been pressed down by Zi Yuan, finally couldn't stand it anymore. She jumped up and shouted, "You two shameless things, what are you showing off here? Isn't it just that you have a great father? Get out of here, get out of here. Without your father, what are you?" Su Chan surprisingly agreed. She nodded hard and made a face at Shen Yu. Shen Yu was shocked, but when he saw Wan Hongling's angry look, he felt that when this girl was angry, there was also a special flavor, especially when Su Chan made a face. Her charming and cute appearance made his heart itch. In front of the beauty, Shen Yu was dazzled for a moment. He couldn't even walk and became a love-struck fool. Shen Hui felt disgusted watching from the side. She glared at Li Yundong fiercely and was about to leave when she saw a familiar figure coming over. She was immediately overjoyed and went over to greet him. "Dad!" "Well, speak of the devil." Li Yundong and the others all looked over and saw Shen Hui throwing herself into the arms of an old man in his 60s. The old man was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He was slightly fat, but his eyes were sharp and bright. Zhou Qin frowned and whispered in Li Yundong's ear, "This is Shen Wankai, the boss of the Wankai group in Tiannan City. He is a big shot in Tiannan City. I don't know why he came to Dongwu City. Maybe he is doing business." While they were guessing, they saw Shen Yu, Shen Hui, and a few bodyguards next to him surround Shen Wankai and walk to the arena. Shen Wankai exchanged pleasantries with the host, Zheng Yuming, and the others on the arena, and then sat straight in the middle of the referee's seat. When Li Yundong saw this, he immediately took a deep breath. "No way. He is the referee." Zhou Qin frowned. No wonder Shen Hui was so arrogant. It turns out that she knows that Shen Wankai is the referee. Well, with Shen Wansai's influence, his score will directly affect the scores of the other referees. No one else would dare to offend him. Su Chan looked worried. "Ah. Then aren't we going to be in trouble?" Wan Hongling was so angry that her face turned pale. What kind of world is this? A group of well-dressed guys look bright on the surface, but in fact, they are all dirty and dirty. Bah! I'm going to tell everyone. Zi Yuan hurriedly grabbed her and shouted, "Nonsense! Do you have any evidence? You're making trouble before the competition even starts." Zhou Qin also said in a low voice, "What should we do now? Should we advance or retreat? Hurry up and make a decision." For a moment, Li Yundong couldn't help but hesitate. He had never expected that he would encounter so many obstacles when he came to participate in a tea art competition. Before the competition even started, he had already encountered double unspoken rules, and at the same time, he was facing the double threat of the organizer and the referee. No matter how firm Li Yundong's will was, he couldn't help but feel nervous at this time. He frowned inwardly, but just as he was hesitating, he glanced at the arena and saw that Shen Hui was looking at him with a provocative look, as if to say, "Get out of here, lest you make a fool of yourself." Beside her, Shen Yu couldn't help but glance back and forth at Su Chan with a pair of lustful eyes. This time, Li Yundong was infuriated. His face was as dark as water, and he said flatly, "I once said that we cultivators should have the spirit of knowing that there are tigers in the mountain. If you retreat from such a small worldly matter, then what's the point of cultivating? Go home and do nothing. Everyone, please take your places. I'm going to accompany my teacher to have a meal. I'm sorry for the late update. Let's bow. // 785462789541. Chapter 311. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's resolute words made the people around him suddenly feel refreshed. Zi Yuan also nodded. Yes, we cultivators should indeed have the spirit of not fearing hardships and dangers. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Since we have already participated in the competition, we should have a clear conscience. Go to watch net. Zhou Qin was calm and shrewd by nature. It was hard to tell whether she was happy or angry at the moment. She just pondered for a while and said, "Since we are going to participate in the competition, we should pay special attention to the opponents of West Lake Longjing, Taiping Hokue, and Wui de Hongpao. These competitors are extremely difficult to deal with." Wan Hongling had blind confidence in Zi Yuan. She said, "This is a competition of tea skills, not a competition of tea leaves. If whoever has the best tea leaves wins, then what's the point of holding such a challenge? Isn't it better to just hold an auction?" "Right, Sister Zi Yuan." Zi Yuan smiled slightly and didn't comment. Su Chan, the little girl, didn't know what to say. She just looked at this and that, feeling a little unhappy that she couldn't help. Li Yundong didn't pay attention to the little girl's abnormality. He said to Zi Yuan, "When you go on stage later, pay special attention to your surroundings. As the saying goes, you can't have the intention to harm others, but you can't have the heart to guard against others. You have to be wary of these guys playing tricks on some equipment." Zi Yuan smiled confidently. "Don't worry." They talked in private for a while. Not long after, the host of the tea culture and art competition gracefully went on the stage. At this time, the square of the Palace of Culture was surging with people. Not only were there a large number of media reporters, but there were also many businessmen who had heard the news and came to see the beautiful women. After the host made a brief opening speech on the stage, he invited the organizer, Zheng Yuming, to come on stage to give a speech. Zheng Yuming still inherited his authentic and mellow temperament of a nouveau riche. As soon as he got on the stage, his glittering gold necklace, gold bracelets, and gold rings attracted a burst of admiration from the audience. After Zheng Yuming read the opening remarks according to the script, he introduced the referees of the Tea Culture and Art Challenge on the stage one by one. Li Yundong saw that among the referees who were sitting upright, there were scholars who wrote books, well-known media hosts, business tycoons, and even fashion models. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He whispered, "What kind of referees are they? Why are there all kinds of people? Do they know how to make tea?" Zhou Qin said, "I don't know about others, but Chen Wankai knows. As far as I know, he often attends all kinds of rare tea auctions." A while ago, Taiping Monkey King was sold at a high price, and he bought it. Li Yundong laughed. "That's good. The only one who understands tea is my enemy." "Very good, very good." Li Yundong laughed at himself. He saw that the representatives on the stage had already begun to draw numbers. When it was Zi Yuan's turn, she gracefully stepped onto the stage. Her otherworldly temperament caused an uproar under the stage. Watch net. 7 KOM. The other manufacturers and the tea lady looked at Zi Yuan as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Wan Hongling, who was under the stage, smiled proudly and said, "The eyes of the masses are clear." Li Yundong chuckled. After Zi Yuan stepped down from the stage, he looked at the ranking on the stage and suddenly asked in confusion, "Hey, Zi Yuan is the last one? She's the finale." Zhou Qin suddenly sneered and said, "This is the worst position. Tasting tea is like tasting fresh food. Naturally, it is the most advantageous at the beginning. Because at that time, the referees who taste tea will have a refreshing mouth, they will naturally be able to taste the fragrance of the tea more, so they will give a higher score. But if they wait until the end, their taste buds will be a little tired, so the score will naturally be lower." Hearing this, Wan Hongling said angrily, "Shameless. This must be a black box operation." Li Yundong frowned, but when he looked at the ranking above, he found that Qing'er, who had participated in the competition with Wui de Hongpao, was ranked second to last in front of Zi Yuan. He said, "Look, Qing'er from the Pine Valley Cottage is ranked in front of Zi Yuan. Isn't she afraid that the judges will not give a high score because of the fatigue of the taste buds?" Zhou Qin shook her head and said, "Wui de Hongpao is the champion of tea. Its taste is strong and mellow, which can't be replaced by other teas. Maybe this is their idea. They want to use the extremely fragrant tea fragrance of Wui de Hongpao to make the judges' taste buds tired. Zhenren Zi Yuan's Huangshan Maofeng has a light fragrance, so naturally, she will suffer a great loss." Hearing this, Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Wan Hongling all cursed the organizers in unison. However, Zi Yuan, who was under the stage, was open-minded. She smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. The real tea art can't be framed by such a sneaky trick." When Li Yundong and the others saw that Zi Yuan was full of confidence, they also felt relieved and focused on watching the tea art competition that had already begun on the stage. They saw a young and beautiful tea lady on the stage. She was dressed in the Gusu style of the Ming dynasty, with a round collar and narrow sleeves. As soon as she came on the stage, she bowed to the crowd with her bright eyes, which immediately caused a burst of cheers. Li Yundong raised his head and saw that this beautiful woman was the tea lady who had been next to Zheng Yuming before. This tea lady was the first to appear on the stage because of the black box operation, so she naturally had a great advantage. She first carried her own tea set to the stage, placed it on the waist-high mahogany table, and then showed it to the audience one by one. At this time, there was a special cameraman on the stage. The camera was facing the table, and there was a huge plasma TV screen at the back of the stage, so that the audience could clearly see the close-up scene of the tea lady performing the tea art. Li Yundong looked over and saw that the tea chosen by the tea lady was Taiping Monkey King. He couldn't help asking, "Strange, isn't this tea lady representing Zheng Yuming? Isn't Zheng Yuming Taiguanin? Why is she using Taiping Monkey King? What kind of tea is this?" Zhou Qin was born in a wealthy family and knew a lot about tea culture. She said, "Taiping Monkey King is also a famous tea in China. Together with Westlake Longjing, Huangshan Maofeng, and Wui de Hongpao, it is the exclusive imperial tea of the State Council. Let's go. 7. K.O.M. Zheng Yuming has the temperament of a nouveau riche and specializes in Thai guanyin. Although Thai guanyin also has the best tea, there is still a certain gap between it and Taiping Monkey King, Westlake Longjing, Huangshan Maofeng, and Wui de Hong Pao. Therefore, if they don't want to be at a disadvantage in terms of tea, they must choose Taiping Monkey King to fight. Zi Yuan, who was standing to one side, nodded and said with a smile, yes, although this Taiping Monkey King has not been famous recently, it is still a great tea, especially the mother tea produced by the authentic monkey pit. It is even more valuable, not inferior to my Huangshan Maofeng. Moreover, just by listening to its name, you can tell that it has the character Kuei in it. Naturally, it's a great tea. While everyone was talking, the tea lady moved gracefully and lit a bunch of incense on an incense burner next to her. Zhou Qin explained, the tea arts of China's black tea, green tea, and oolong tea are different. Taiping Monkey King belongs to green tea, so according to the green tea art, the first procedure is to light incense and burn the incense burner to get rid of delusion. At this time, the tea lady on the stage gently washed each teacup with water. Zhou Qin said, this is the second set of procedures, called Wash the Cup of Ice Heart to go to the mortal world. Hearing this, Zi Yuan couldn't help but look at Zhou Qin up and down. She smiled and said, do you know a lot about tea art? Zhou Qin smiled slightly and said, it's not a study. It's just that there are some good mechanical tribute tea all year round. I've come into contact with some in my spare time before. Zi Yuan chuckled and said to Li Yundong, you've accepted a good disciple. Li Yundong laughed and waved his hand. You're flattering me. While they were talking and laughing, they saw the tea lady performing all the way. She had already performed the fifth procedure, moistening the lotus heart with sweet tea dew. She poured water into the teacups placed on the square table and made tea. At this time, Zhou Qin suddenly said, here comes the highlight. Li Yundong's spirit was lifted and he looked at the stage. At this time, those who knew about tea art all looked at the tea lady with their eyes wide open. Zhou Qin explained softly and quickly, this is the sixth procedure of the green tea art, also known as the 3 nods to the water phoenix. It's one of the procedures of all the tea art, and it's also the one that tests one's skills the most. Li Yundong saw the tea lady lift the teapot high and let the water pour straight down. Then, she used the strength of her wrist to lift it up and down and pour water into it. She repeated this 3 times, turning the tea leaves in the water. At this time, the slow motion of the tea lady performing the 3 nods of the phoenix, kung fu, appeared on the plasma screen. The tea lady's elbow and wrist were flat, and her wrist was soft and boneless. The water splashed down like silver satin. Everyone saw the sound of water 3 times loud and 3 times soft, the water line 3 times thick and 3 times thin, the water flow 3 times high and 3 times low, and the water flow 3 times up and down in the pot 3 times. The movements of the 3 nods of the phoenix were surprisingly consistent. In the end, the amount of tea in these tea bowls was exactly the same, as if it had been carefully calculated. At this time, the audience under the stage could see the key points clearly. They let out a burst of exclamation, and applause and cheers rang out at the same time. Zi Yuan also smiled faintly and nodded slightly. Not bad. You've worked hard. Although Su Chan and Wan Hongling despised the dirty and despicable behavior of the organizer, they had to admit that the tea lady was indeed very good at tea art. The 3 nods of the phoenix just now could be called a unique skill. The tea lady also knew that she had performed very well. The next performance was like flowing clouds and flowing water, becoming more and more smooth and confident. When she finished her performance and stepped off the stage, the audience immediately burst into thunderous applause. The referee, who was tasting tea, also nodded and praised her. Chen Wankai even showed a look of appreciation and exclaimed, "Not bad, good tea art." The tea lady who appeared first won the first prize and won a full house. The pressure on the tea ladies who appeared next suddenly increased. Although some of them also performed well, no one could surpass the tea lady who appeared first. Some people even made mistakes in nervousness, causing the referee on the referee's seat to frown secretly. After performing all the way, it was finally time for Wui de Hongpao, the top scholar in tea art, to appear. A plain-looking but arrogant girl jumped onto the stage with a rocket-like cannon. The arena was 1.5 meters high. Ordinary people with little strength might not be able to climb up, but she had pulled herself up from the ground. Suddenly, the sleepy audience under the stage was refreshed and applauded. For a moment, the host on the stage was a little embarrassed, so he had to say in a hurry, "The next contestant is Lin Xueqing from Wui de Hongpao. Please welcome her." Lin Xueqing stood proudly and said something amazing as soon as she opened her mouth. "Today, I want to show everyone what real tea art is." She was young, so when she spoke, there was an uproar under the stage. Someone sneered and said, "You're so young, but you're so arrogant." The referee on the referee's seat showed a disapproving look. Only Chen Wankai chuckled and said, "What a young hero." Everyone saw that Lin Xueqing's tone was amazing, and the tea she chose was also extremely expensive, top-grade de Hongpao, so they stopped making noise for a while and waited to see her make a fool of herself. Li Yundong and the others also stared at her with their eyes wide open. Wan Hongling and Su Chan kept muttering, constantly cursing the arrogant girl for making a fool of herself. Li Yundong saw that Lin Xueqing's tea art procedure was different from before, so he asked curiously, "She seems to be different from the others." Zhou Qin said to Li Yundong in a low voice, "This Wui de Hongpao is an oolong tea. The tea art procedure of oolong tea is different from that of green tea. They are, preparing for use, respectfully inviting people to sit down, burning incense to calm the atmosphere, peacock spreading its tail, Mengchen bathing in the rain, high mountain flowing water, black dragon entering the palace, 100 zhang flying waterfall, spring breeze brushing the face, jade liquid moving pot, sweet dew, and phoenix 3 nods." Li Yundong asked, "Is there also phoenix 3 nods?" Zhou Qin said, "Yes, this is an extremely important part of the tea art. Let's see how she performs." The two of them were whispering to each other when they saw Lin Xueqing performing skillfully all the way. However, she had been too arrogant before, so everyone was prejudiced and felt that it was nothing special. Some people even booed her loudly. But Lin Xueqing didn't care. She suddenly held the teapot beside her in the palm of her hand and said loudly, "The water made by ordinary fire is ordinary after all. Look at the water made by the Wuming fire to make this tea." She held the teapot high in one hand, and her whole body seemed to have frozen for a moment, not moving at all. Seeing her strange posture, the audience burst into laughter and teased her, "Is this your tea art? It's so funny. It's so ugly. Wuming fire. I'm so angry with you. Get off the stage." While the audience was clamoring, the teapot in Lin Xueqing's hand suddenly emitted bursts of white qi. The white qi rolled on the arena, and in an instant, it formed the shape of a phoenix, which was lifelike and dreamlike. Everyone was stunned and speechless for a moment. Zi Yuan was also shocked. Zi Yuan's expression also changed. She exclaimed, condensing qi into form. "She's amazing. Only after cultivating the yin qi in her body into pure yang qi can she control her qi so well. This is the top realm of the yang spirit. No wonder she's so arrogant." Lin Xueqing held the teapot and shook her wrist. The phoenix, which was made of steam, nodded. Immediately, a stream of hot water gushed out of the mouth of the phoenix, which was the mouth of the teapot. Everyone felt that this stream of water was like water from the ninth heaven falling from the sky. The water surged in the teacup, and a mist rolled out, echoing with the phoenix, making it look more and more dreamy. The sound of water in the teacup was like the chorus of birds, and all birds were paying homage to the phoenix. Everyone stared blankly at Lin Xueqing shaking her wrist 3 times, and the phoenix nodded 3 times. The tea bowls on the tea table were also filled to the brim. 3 bowls of Wui de Hong Pao tea were filled to the brim. Lin Xueqing's move shocked everyone present. Shen Wankai stood up excitedly and said loudly, "I didn't expect to see the real phoenix nodding 3 times here. Good. Bring it over and let me have a taste." Immediately, an MC in a cheongsam came up and brought the tea to the judges. The other judges tasted it and were all full of praise. Shen Wankai even praised it 3 times in a row. Good. 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 At this time, almost everyone in the field reacted, and their cheers shook the sky. Li Yundong and Zhou Qin looked shocked and shocked. They looked at each other and were secretly shocked. Only Zi Yuan's face was as dark as water, and there was a faint worry in her eyes. She thought to herself, Lin Xueqing is performing tea art with her cultivation skills. Not only is her tea art exquisite, but her cultivation skills are also not inferior to mine. I wonder if I can beat her, //7854627895541. Chapter 312. Go to Watch Network. Lin Xueqing's subversive performance not only impressed the audience, but even Li Yundong couldn't help but say in surprise, "Can cultivation be used to perform tea art?" Wan Hongling looked at Zi Yuan worriedly. She opened her mouth, but swallowed the words in her mouth. Go to watch. 7 K.O.M. At this time, Lin Xueqing, who was on the stage, cupped her fists and then left the stage. The host came up to say a few opening remarks. When she was about to step off the stage, she bumped into the tea table and almost staggered, causing the audience to burst into laughter. Her action was nothing, but when she stepped off the stage, the host cast a glance at Zheng Yuming. Zheng Yuming immediately understood and nodded secretly. The two of them had been looking at each other secretly, but Zhou Qin, who had been staring at the stage, noticed it. She felt that she hadn't cultivated yet, so she didn't know anything and couldn't help Li Yundong in any way. So she kept staring at the stage vigilantly. Seeing that the expressions of the two of them were not right, she immediately said, "Li Yundong, tell Zi Yuan to be careful. I'm afraid that they might have done something to the table." Li Yundong was stunned and blurted out, "I know they are shameless, but they can't be that shameless, can they? How could they do something to the table?" He looked at Zi Yuan, who had already come to the edge of the stage, and said in a low voice, "There's no way to remind her now. What should we do?" Wan Hongling said, "Let me do it. I'll send a voice transmission to Sister Zi Yuan." She said in a private voice transmission, "Sister Zi Yuan, you have to pay attention to this tea table. I'm afraid that there's something wrong with it." Zi Yuan was stunned, but her face remained calm. She just glanced in the direction of Li Yundong and the others and nodded slightly. After the host finished the introduction, Zi Yuan held her own tea set, which was filled with teapots, and went to the stage gracefully. As soon as she appeared on the stage, her appearance and temperament were far better than that of the previous tea lady. Everyone under the stage suddenly gasped and was shocked by her amazing beauty. Even the most daring men didn't dare to have the slightest blasphemy in their minds when they saw her. The boldest one was just thinking in his heart, does such a beautiful and ethereal woman really belong to this world? What kind of man could be worthy of her? At this time, Zi Yuan was wearing a white dress, which had the classical charm of Han clothing and the modern atmosphere of modern fashion. She really looked like a fairy who had come from heaven to earth, which was amazing. Watch net. Zi Yuan held the plate and bowed to the audience below the stage. Then, she put the plate on the tea table in front of her. As soon as she put it down, the tea table suddenly tilted. Fortunately, Zhou Qin had discovered some clues before, and Zi Yuan had been reminded again. She immediately poured out the jinqi in her body silently and gently supported the foot of the tea table. She glanced around and saw that the foot of the tea table had been tampered with. There was a mechanism installed. As long as a switch was turned next to the tea table, the four corners of the tea table would immediately become extremely loose, and if something was placed on it, it would tilt. Because Zi Yuan's reaction was extremely fast, the people under the stage did not notice the abnormality for a while. They only saw the tea table shake a little and then stabilize again. But at this time, all the jinqi and energy in Zi Yuan's body were used to support the tea table. If she wanted to perform the tea art calmly, it would be difficult. She immediately sent a voice transmission to Li Yundong for help. Li Yundong, this table has indeed been tampered with. With a little strength, it will tilt. Your jinqi is strong. Hold this table in the air so that I can wave it. Li Yundong didn't know how to use voice transmission. Without saying a word, he immediately raised his palms in the air and lifted the table from a few meters away. As soon as Li Yundong's powerful Yuanyang genuine qi surged over, Zi Yuan immediately felt a lot more at ease. She breathed a sigh of relief, took back her jinqi, and began to concentrate on performing the tea art. Zheng Yuming, who was under the stage, saw that Zi Yuan's tea table was placed on the tea table as stable as Mount Tai. He suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the host. The host was also stunned and made an innocent gesture, indicating that he had indeed done it. Only Zhong Qingsong, who was next to Zheng Yuming, saw the clues. He smiled slightly and walked toward Li Yundong. When he walked up to Li Yundong, he secretly used qi and slapped Li Yundong with his palm, saying, "Jinrenli, shall we shake hands?" Li Yundong was shocked and had to secretly withdraw his jinqi. He turned around and slapped the other party's palm. With a bang, the two of them shook hands and immediately froze in place like stone statues. Go to see net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6 at this time, without the support of Li Yundong's jinqi, the tea table suddenly tilted. Zi Yuan was quick to react. Jinqi immediately gushed out of her body and supported the tea table again. At the same time, she sent a voice transmission to Ruan Hongling, "Hongling, help, hurry up." Seeing that Zhong Qingsong was coming to make trouble for Li Yundong, Ruan Hongling immediately gritted her teeth. The jinqi in her body gushed out and supported the tea table. However, her jinqi was not strong enough, and she couldn't hold it a few meters away. Su Chan, who was beside her, saw that the situation was not good. She didn't care that she didn't deal with Ruan Hongling, so she immediately drove the jinqi in her body to help. Zi Yuan suddenly opened the lid of the teapot and grabbed the void in the air. The jinqi in her body suddenly surged out and grabbed the white qi rising from the top of Li Yundong's head. Everyone saw that the white mist was flowing horizontally, like a Milky Way bridge. Zi Yuan held the teapot in her hand and quickly completed the 3 nods of the phoenix. Then, at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye, she used her 5 fingers as a pen. Her fingers flew up and down, quickly drawing and carving on the condensed mist in the air. After a while, Zi Yuan pecked, carved, painted, twisted, held, pinched, and cut. After a while, she drew an old man riding on the back of a donkey in the air, holding a wooden stick with a gourd hanging on it. She took a picture of him in the camera and then projected it on the plasma screen. His smile was lifelike. It was Zhang Guolao, one of the 8 immortals, riding a donkey upside down. At this time, both the referee on the stage and the audience were in an uproar. They were so shocked that they couldn't control themselves. After Zi Yuan finished drawing Zhang Guolao riding a donkey upside down, she turned her wrist and began to draw another character. After a while, everyone saw a middle-aged man with a bare chest and an iron crutch in his hand. It was Iron Crutch Lee. At this time, everyone was already stunned. They saw Zi Yuan's fingers on the stage instantly draw a lifelike immortal from the illusory white qi. Her methods were like a miracle, and she was as elegant as a fairy. Later, Zi Yuan's hands flew left and right, drawing Han Zhongli, Lan Caihe, He Xiangu, Lu Dongbin, Han Xiangzi, and Chao Guijiu one by one. For a time, everyone could see the 8 immortals in the White Qi River in different postures. They were riding the clouds and the mist, as if they were going to cross the sea. Especially at this time, it was daytime. When the sun shone on the Qi River, it suddenly reflected light and formed a long line. It was really like an immortal descending to the world, dazzling everyone. At this time, there was another exclamation from the audience, and everyone was dumbfounded. After Zi Yuan finished drawing all the 8 immortals, she suddenly rolled up her sleeves gracefully and gently with one hand. Her other hand was like Buddha picking flowers. With a flick of her finger, she gently plucked the lifelike Zhang Guolao out of the long river of white qi. Then, with a flip of her wrist, she held one of the teacups in front of the tea tray. Suddenly, Zhang Guolao stayed on the cup of tea and did not dissipate for a while. Then, Zi Yuan, like the Queen Mother picking peaches, picked the other 7 immortals one by one and placed them on the teacups in front of her. Everyone saw that the 8 immortals were floating above the 8 bowls of tea. The tea in the bowls was emitting waves of hot air, making the 8 immortals look like they were in a fairyland. While they were watching in fascination, Zi Yuan suddenly waved her sleeve, and a gust of wind rose from her sleeve, immediately dispersing the mist. The illusory 8 immortals immediately surged and melted into the tea in the teacup. At this time, Zi Yuan stood gracefully on the stage and said to everyone on and off the stage, "Before, there was the 3 nods of the phoenix, and now the 8 immortals have crossed the sea together. Please comment on who is better." After she finished speaking, everyone looked at her in a daze. The scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. I'll take a bus back to Suzhou tonight, //7854627895541. Chapter 313. Go to watch net. After Zi Yuan showed off her kung fu, the audience on and off the stage were all dumbfounded for a moment. Only Chen Wankai was so excited that his face turned red. He suddenly stood up and walked toward the stage, trembling all over. His mouth kept trembling, and his eyes were fixed on the bowl of Huangshan Maofeng tea, which was floating with white smoke. After a long time, he said in a trembling voice, "This kind of tea art really should only exist in heaven. How many times can I hear it in the human world?" Go to watch net. 7 K.O.M. Master, can drinking this tea make you immortal? Although Chen Wankai saw that Zi Yuan was not only beautiful, but also young and eloquent, he didn't dare to regard the person in front of him as a vase. He knew that only a grandmaster tea art master could have such a good work, so he respectfully called Zi Yuan master and didn't dare to offend her in the slightest. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and cupped her hands, saying, "I won't be able to achieve immortality, but I can rejuvenate my qi and focus my mind to prolong my life." There was a slight look of disappointment in Chen Wansai's eyes, but he soon became excited again and asked respectfully, "Can I have a taste?" Zi Yuan elegantly spread out a palm and gestured, "Go ahead." At this time, it was extremely quiet on and off the stage. Except for Li Yunyang, Zhong Qingsong, Lin Xueqing, and Su Chan, Wan Hongling, who were using Jinqi to drag the tea table, everyone was staring at the stage and Chen Wankai eagerly. They couldn't wait to drag this old man down, then say a few words to this beautiful fairy and drink a bowl of immortal tea. Chen Wankai was so excited that his hands were trembling. He stretched out his hand to pick up the cup of tea from Zhang Guolao. As he held the teacup in his hand, it swayed in the air and splashed a lot of tea, causing many people under the stage to criticize him in their hearts. Shen Wankai brought the teacup to his mouth and carefully took a sip. Then, he raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. He only felt that when this cup of tea entered his throat, his entire body had heated up. His entire body was steaming hot and filled with strength. However, when the tea reached his stomach, there was a coolness and fragrance in this heat, making him feel relaxed and refreshed. Even Chen Wankai himself didn't know whether it was because Zi Yuan's previous methods were so amazing that he had a strong psychological suggestion that he could transcend the mortal world and become a saint after drinking this bowl of immortal tea, or that this bowl of Huangshan Maofeng was really fragrant and elegant, which was unparalleled in the world. After Chen Wankai drank a cup of tea, he couldn't help but burst into tears. After staying on the stage for a long time, he let out a long sigh and said in a choked voice, "I've lived for most of my life and been to countless places. Zi Yuan didn't know what they were thinking, so she smiled at Chen Wankai and said, "Hongnom." Chen Wankai was overjoyed and immediately picked up another cup of tea, as if he had found a treasure. This time, he didn't drink it in one gulp. Instead, he tasted it carefully and slowly. He sighed and recited a poem, "The people of Yu left me the tea of Shanxi, and I picked the golden buds and poured them into the golden tripod. Go to see the net. 7 Kom. The pure porcelain is snow white and fragrant. How can it be like the elixir of immortals?" Zi Yuan smiled and said, "One drink washes away my drowsiness, and my feelings fill the world. Another drink clears my spirit, and suddenly it's like flying rain sprinkling light dust. 3 drinks and I can get the Tao. Why bother to get rid of troubles?" When Chen Wankai saw that Zi Yuan actually knew this extremely rare tea-drinking poem, he was immediately surprised and happy. He laughed and said in a somewhat shameless manner, "Since 3 drinks can help me achieve the Tao, then I still need 1 more cup." This time, Zi Yuan didn't say anything. The audience below the stage couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "You old man, you're really thick-skinned. 2 cups are not enough. You want a 3rd cup? You're too shameless. That's right. Hurry up and go down." Chen Wankai wasn't angry. He smiled and cupped his hands. He waved to the judges on the stage and said, "Everyone, come and have a taste." As soon as he called out, the other judges dared to get down from their seats and come to the tea table to taste the tea. Some of them had a little bit of knowledge in their stomachs. After drinking it, they shook their heads and praised it. Some of them didn't have much knowledge in their stomachs, so they kept shouting praises. Zheng Yuming, who was watching from below the stage, took advantage of the chaos on the stage and squeezed his way up. Just as he reached out to take the last cup of tea, Chen Wankai suddenly said, "Mr. Zheng, can you let me have this cup of tea?" Zheng Yuming's outstretched hand suddenly froze in midair. He raised his head and looked at Chen Wankai, forcing a dry smile on his face. Chen Wankai leaned forward, tilted his head, and glanced at him sideways. "What? You don't want to?" Zheng Yuming was shocked by Chen Wankai's gaze, and his hand immediately retracted as if it had been electrocuted. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Don't mention it. Old Master Shen wants to drink tea. How dare I snatch it?" Shen Wankai chuckled. He turned his head and looked at the other judges. "Do you have any objections?" He seemed to be asking, but these people didn't dare to say no. They shook their heads one after another and flattered him, "We are just half immortals who have drunk 2 cups of tea. Old Master Shen, you have drunk 3 cups in a row, so you are an immortal. Instead of having 1 more half immortal, it is better to have 1 more immortal. We can also follow the chickens and dogs to heaven together." Chen Wankai laughed and said, "I'm not an immortal." He pointed at Zi Yuan and said, "This is an immortal." As he said this, he cupped his hands and bowed to Zi Yuan, then picked up the teacup and said loudly to the audience below the stage, "Since everyone wants me to drink, I will drink it." Seeing that the old man was so thick-skinned, the audience laughed and scolded him one after another. Chen Wankai didn't care what they said. He raised his head and drank the third cup in one gulp. The other people on the stage looked at him and saw that his cup was as clean as if it had been washed. There was not a drop of tea left. Although they were smiling, they felt lost in their hearts. Zheng Yuming, in particular, looked at the empty teacup and thought to himself, as the organizer of such a tea culture and art competition, I can't even drink a sip of this immortal tea. What's going on? Seeing that Chen Wankai had finished drinking, Zi Yuan smiled and said, "Since the tea has been drunk, please comment on who is in first place." After she said this, Zheng Yuming suddenly shivered and hurriedly winked at Chen Wankai. However, Chen Wankai acted as if he hadn't seen it. After drinking 3 bowls of tea, he calmed down again. He looked at Zi Yuan with interest and suddenly asked, "Why didn't you ask me this question first when I was about to drink the 3rd bowl of tea just now? If you had asked me at that time, I would have definitely said that you were first. Aren't you afraid that I will change my mind now that I have finished drinking the tea?" Zi Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Justice is in the hearts of the people. If you can speak against your conscience, then this immortal tea will become ordinary water. Even if you have become an immortal, you will become immortal. As the saying goes, Jinren doesn't lie. That's exactly what I mean." Chen Wankai laughed, clapped his hands, and said loudly, "Well said. You will definitely be first. If you don't get first place, I, Chen Wankai, will be the first to disagree." As soon as he spoke, the other judges who were looking at him eagerly also said, "Zi Yuan should be first." Zheng Yoming's legs and stomach trembled when he heard this, and his face turned ashen. He was so angry in his heart that he thought, "You old B*****, how can you be so generous with my money? This is a competition held by me, and I paid for the prize money. In the end, I didn't even get a sip of the immortal tea, but I have to pay 2 million yuan. What kind of F***king logic is this?" Zheng Yuming burst into tears in his heart. He felt that this was the most tragic thing in the world, but the most tragic thing was that, he actually had to pretend to smile and then loudly announce that Zi Yuan was the first in the competition. What kind of world was this? Was there any justice? Was there any law? However, Zheng Yuming was not a simple person. The moment his face froze, he immediately squeezed out a smile. Then, with a look of joy and honor, he said loudly, "Congratulations to Miss Zi Yuan and her contestant, Huangshan Maofeng, for winning the first place in the competition." Seeing this, Su Chan and Ruan Hongling couldn't help but sigh. They only felt that this person was thick-skinned and changed his expression so quickly, which was really rare in the world. As soon as Zheng Yuming announced the result loudly on the stage, there was a burst of thunderous cheers from the audience. In this burst of cheers, the winner of the competition between Li Yundong, Zhong Qingsong, and Lin Xueqing was suddenly decided. Li Yundong was fighting 1 against 2, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. Although Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqing were both in the yang spirit yuanying phase, the Jinqi in their bodies was not comparable to Li Yundong's Jindan's qi, so they were suppressed by him. Li Yundong was secretly fighting with the 2 of them, but at the same time, he was listening in all directions. When he heard that Zi Yuan had won the first place, he immediately felt relieved. He didn't want to quarrel with the 2 of them in front of everyone, so he said, "The winner has been decided on the stage. Do we have to see life and death before we stop?" At this time, Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqing had used all their strength to resist Li Yundong's magnificent Jinqi. They were in a state of full concentration. Not to mention speaking, it was extremely difficult for them to even move their eyes. However, they saw that Li Yundong could still speak in the situation of 1 against 2. His voice was as clear as usual. They were suddenly shocked and shocked. Li Yundong looks like he is only 20 years old. Why is the Jinqi in his body so strong? How can he still have the strength to speak when fighting 1 against 2? Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's womb, he could never have cultivated to such a level. Starting from tomorrow, at 3 o'clock a day, and then until the 30th, 7 days, / 7854627895541. Chapter 314. Go to watch net. Li Yundong saw the fear in their eyes, so he said, if this goes on, both sides will definitely suffer. In public, no one can get away with it. Why don't we each take a step back? What do you think? As he spoke, he withdrew a little Jinqi. Go to watch net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6. As soon as he withdrew his Jinqi, Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqing immediately breathed a sigh of relief, as if the mountain above their heads had been lifted half an inch and they could breathe. They also withdrew a little Jinqi. Seeing that they were returning the favor, Li Yundong knew that the two of them didn't want to make a big deal out of this. He tentatively took back some Jinqi. The three of them took back a little, and I also took back a little. Slowly, all three of them took back their Jinqi. The three of them stopped. Zhong Qingsong looked at Li Yundong in shock and asked involuntarily, who is your master? How did you cultivate such strong and condensed Jinqi? It's absolutely impossible for the Fox Zen school to teach you such cultivation kung fu. In the cultivation world, it was taboo to inquire about other people's sex and cultivation methods. Zhong Qingsong's question was very abrupt and rude. If he hadn't been extremely surprised and lost his composure, he would never have said it. Li Yundong's cultivation kung fu had been introduced to him by Su Chan and taught by Zi Yuan. How could he be willing to tell them his secret? He just glanced at Zhong Qingsong and said lightly, I don't have a master. Zhong Qingsong naturally didn't believe it, but he couldn't do anything to Li Yundong. The cultivation world and the martial arts world were very similar in that whoever had the strongest cultivation had the right to speak. Since ancient times, there had been no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. If scholars wanted to compete, they would bicker for hundreds of years and still not be able to tell who was better. However, the cultivation world was not like this. If anyone was not convinced, they could fight until they were convinced. No matter what, there would be a first place and a second place. Why was the Zhengyi school strong? Because the predecessor of Zhengyi school was the 5 Pecks of Rice sect founded by Zhang Ling. This sect had flourished since the Han dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period. Each generation was more capable than the last, and it had more than 100,000 disciples. During the period of Emperor Zhenzong of the Song dynasty, the emperor summoned Zhang Jingsui, the Taoist master of Zhengyi school, and from then on established the supreme position of Zhengyi school as the leader of the Holy Land of the Three Mountains. The cultivation sects in the world knew that they were no match for the Zhengyi school alone. Therefore, they created a loose organization of the 6 sects in an attempt to resist the expansion of the Zhengyi school. The strength that Li Yundong had shown at this time really frightened Zhong Qingsong of the Pine Valley Cottage in Mount Huangshan. He felt that his Pine Valley Cottage was not a big sect like the Zhengyi school, and it was not even as good as any of the 6 sects. Although his sect controlled the tea garden business near Mount Huangshan and had some money, when it came to fighting, only Zhong Qingsong and Lin Xueqing could fight. The others were just bystanders. Lin Xueqing was also clear about this. She was already convinced by Li Yundong's kung fu. She thought to herself, no wonder he could repel so many people from the 6 great sects alone. I thought most of the people from the 6 great sects were idiots. Now it seems that Li Yundong really has his own uniqueness. But even though she thought this in her heart, she refused to admit it. She didn't dare to make trouble for Li Yundong again, but she glanced at Zi Yuan in the arena. Go to the watch net. 7 K.O.M. At this time, the situation on the arena had been decided. The MC was about to give Zi Yuan the award when Lin Xueqing suddenly shouted, "I don't accept it." Everyone present heard her loud shout clearly, and for a moment, everyone's gaze turned towards her. Lin Xueqing was not afraid. She jumped into the arena, pointed at Zi Yuan with one hand, and said loudly, "I don't accept it. I didn't lose to you, but to him." As she said this, she pointed at Li Yundong. Everyone's eyes turned to Li Yundong in unison, and they were puzzled. They didn't understand why Lin Xueqing said that she had lost to someone who was not participating in the competition, and not to someone who was participating in the competition on the stage. Chen Wankai, who was on the stage, frowned, and there was a thoughtful expression on his face. Some people couldn't understand this, so they all booed. "If you lose, you have to admit it. If you can't afford to lose, don't participate in the competition." Lin Xueqing had been spoiled by her master for many years, so she had never been humiliated like this. Her face turned red for a moment, and she said loudly, "If it weren't for Li Zhenren." Before she could say the words, "Li Zhenren," Zhong Qingsong suddenly shouted and interrupted her, "Qing'er, shut up." His loud shout made everyone's ears buzz, and they felt a sharp pain. Everyone unconsciously covered their ears and grimaced in pain. Zhong Qingsong jumped onto the stage, glared at her sternly, and said in a low voice, "Don't you think you've caused enough trouble? Come with me." After that, he bowed slightly to Chen Wankai and Zheng Yuming on the stage to express his apology, and then dragged Lin Xueqing off the stage. When everyone saw that Lin Xueqing had been taken away by Zhong Qingsong, they also ridiculed and added insult to injury. Zheng Yuming saw that they didn't have time to collect the prize money and trophy for the second place. He was sad but also a little happy. As he spoke, he walked forward. At this time, Shen Hui had already concluded that her father was angry, but her brother didn't notice it at all. He was still following Chen Wankai, talking about how he had been bullied and blaming Chen Wankai for giving the first place to Zi Yuan. Shen Hui snickered in her heart and was ready to watch a good show later. Chen Wankai didn't respond at all along the way. He just walked into the cultural palace with his children. Along the way, he met acquaintances and greeted them warmly. When he came to a spacious office, he waited for Shen Yu and Shen Hui to enter the door and said in a deep voice, "Go close the door." Shen Hui cleverly took the initiative to close the door, but Shen Yu still kept talking to Chen Wankai, "Dad, hurry up and tell them. Maybe we can take back the first place. I just don't like that guy. Before he could finish his words, Chen Wankai suddenly became furious and slapped Shen Yu in the face. The slap was so hard that Shen Yu's body tilted and he almost fell to the ground. Shen Yu was stunned by this slap. His ears were buzzing, and his mind was blank. There was only one thought left in his mind: why did you hit me? Chen Wankai cursed angrily, "You be ****, you only know how to flirt with girls all day long. I can turn a blind eye to you playing with women, but last time I asked you to come to Dongwu City to do some business, you actually saw a woman and stayed for more than 10 days, causing the business to be ruined. I, Chen Wankai, had to personally apologize to her with a smile. Only then did I get this business back." Shen Yu covered his burning cheeks and said loudly, "Why did you ask me to do such a small business? Can't you just send a project manager?" Chen Wankai was so angry that his whole body was trembling. "You can't even do a small business. Do you want to do a big business? Don't you know that I started my business from a small one?" Shen Yu straightened his neck and scolded loudly, "What era is it now? How can it be compared with the past? This business in Dongwu City is not even enough for my monthly pocket money. You still asked me to do it. You obviously look down on me. Besides, if it fails, then so be it. It's not a big deal. Our Shen family doesn't care about such a small business. Why do you have to apologize?" Shen Wankai was furious and slapped him again. However, this time, Shen Yu was prepared. He raised his hand and blocked it. When Shen Wankai saw that he had blocked it, he became even angrier and slapped him in the face. This time, Shen Yu did not dare to block it head-on. He just protected his face and stiffened his neck to take a few hits. Shen Wankai scolded as he hit him, "I've told you so many times that the most important thing in business is reputation and credibility. Although the business is small, it can ruin my reputation. Do you know how much effort it will take for me to make up for it with just one sentence from you?" He was old, and he was so angry that he was panting for a moment. Shen Hui, who was standing to one side, saw that Shen Yu had been taught a lesson. She patted Chen Wansai's back and carefully comforted him, secretly laughing in her heart. However, Chen Wankai suddenly turned his head and said to Shen Hui, "You, go and find Li Yundong and Zi Yuan for me." Shen Hui was shocked. "Why do you want to find them?" Chen Wankai said angrily, "Look at you two disappointing things. One of you only knows how to buy famous brands and squander money all day long, and the other knows how to flirt with girls all day long. Sooner or later, the foundation of the Shen family will be ruined by you two bastards. I'll find them to be your teachers and let you know how to cultivate your character, so that you won't go out and squander money all day long." Shen Hui didn't expect that in the end, her enemy would become her teacher. She was shocked and subconsciously wanted to refute loudly, but she suddenly saw Chen Wansai's sharp eyes staring at her. She was shocked and immediately reacted. She avoided the truth and said, "Dad, even if you want to invite a teacher, can't you invite the beautiful woman who makes tea? Why do you have to hire that Li Yundong? What ability does he have to teach me?" Chen Wankai looked like a rotten wood that could not be carved. "You really have big breasts and no brains. Has all the fat on your body flowed into your head? What do you mean by a beauty who makes tea? That's called tea art. Do you know tea art? It's something passed down by our ancestors for more than 1,000 years. It's a priceless treasure. Shen Hui, you usually boast that you are smart, but why are you so stupid at such a critical moment?" Zi Yuan had a saintly temperament. Obviously, she was not an ordinary person. With her beauty and temperament, she could be friends with Li Yundong. What did this mean? This means that Li Yundong is definitely not an ordinary person. This is called birds of a feather flock together. Do you understand? As he said this, he turned to Shen Yu and said with a look of exasperation, "Don't think that you can look down on everyone in the world just because you are born into a good family. There are many capable people in the world. If you didn't have me as your father, who the F*ck are you?" He was talking fiercely, but he saw that Shen Hui was dawdling and unwilling to move, so he said angrily, "What's going on? Do you want me to invite you?" Shen Hui was furious in her heart, and she vented her anger on Li Yundong. She thought to herself, "Every time this bastard meets me, nothing good happens. Damn it, damn it." Just as she was walking to the door, she suddenly saw a person knock on the door twice, then push it open and enter. Chen Wankai saw that the outsider had pushed the door open and come in. He was about to lose his temper, but when he saw that the person was his secretary, his anger immediately subsided. He said in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The secretary carefully pointed to the phone and said, "Mr. Chen, you're on the phone." Chen Wankai took the phone and said, "It's me, Chen Wankai." After answering the phone, he said to Shen Hui, who had been dawdling at the door, "Forget it, don't go. I'll hire them with a big gift when I have the chance next time. It's not dignified to go now." Shen Hui was overjoyed. She immediately ran to Chen Wankai and massaged his back and shoulders with a smile. "Dad, I told you it's not good." Chen Wankai didn't expose her little daughter's thoughts. He just snorted coldly. He looked at Shen Yu, who was looking at him with resentment in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Go home now. You're not allowed to leave the house for a month. All your account numbers will be frozen. I'll let you know how ordinary people live, so that you won't go out and make trouble all day long." After that, he nodded to the respectful secretary next to him and then walked out the door. Shen Hui turned around and looked at Xin Yu sympathetically, then slipped out. Only Xin Yu was panting heavily in the room, and the anger in his eyes was getting stronger and stronger. After a while, he suddenly roared, "I'm not convinced. I'm your son. How can you treat me like this?" Xin Yu paced back and forth in the room like a raging beast, clenching his fists and trembling all over. The more he thought about it, the more he blamed everything on Li Yundong. He roared loudly, "Li Yundong, I won't let you off easily. Group 1 to 7 is full. Please add group 8128985497 / 7854627895541. Chapter 315. Go to watch net. Li Yundong naturally didn't know what had happened backstage. When he saw Zi Yuan coming down from the stage, he went up to her with a smile, cupped his hands, and said, "Congratulations, Jinren Zi Yuan, for coming back victorious." Su Chan also joined in the fun. She cupped her hands and said, "Congratulations." Her eyes were fixed on the huge check in Zi Yuan's hand. Go to watch net. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong couldn't help laughing and said, "Look at your silly face. This is fake. You can only get the money backstage when it's over." Su Chan didn't care and said to Li Yundong excitedly, "Are we rich now?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "If we have money, we will spend it immediately. We can't keep it in our hands." Su Chan stared at the fake check, as if she was afraid that it would run away in the next second. She said in a daze, "How much is 2 million? How long do I have to count?" Li Yundong laughed and reached out to pinch Su Chan's cheek. "You're a money grubber." Wan Hongling couldn't help saying, "Hey, this seems to be the money my Shiji won. How did it become yours?" Although Su Chan and Wan Hongling had fought together before, she didn't show any weakness at this time. She snorted and said, "If it weren't for my Yindong spirit reaches to the rainbow, would she have been able to transform into the 8 immortals crossing the sea?" Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel again, Zi Yuan immediately said, "Don't quarrel. This is a prize that we can only get by working together. We can't get it without any one of us." Wan Hongling and Su Chan looked at each other, snorted, and turned their heads away. Zhou Qin was quick-witted. She found a topic and said to Li Yundong, "By the way, why did Lin Xueqing say that she didn't admit defeat? She said that she didn't lose to Jinren Zi Yuan, but to you." Wan Hongling opened her mouth and was about to speak angrily. Zi Yuan was afraid that she would say something bad, so she rushed to say, "In fact, the reason is very simple. Previously, she manipulated the Womanjai fire to boil the water in the teapot, and then used Jinqi to control the white qi to transform it into the shape of a phoenix. Although it was only a rough outline and not very detailed, in terms of Jinqi control, she has reached the realm of Yang's spirit of Yuanying. She is not inferior to me at all. When I saw Li Yundong fighting with the master of the Pine Valley Cottage and his disciple, white qi was continuously coming out of the top of Li Yundong's head. This white qi was the Jinqi that only those with extremely vigorous Jinqi could produce. Because this Jinqi was not as loose and easy to dissipate as ordinary steam, I used this Jinqi to make the 8 immortals crossing the sea. Moreover, the 8 immortals could stay on the teacup and not dissipate. They were lifelike. In comparison, I naturally had a great advantage. Watch net. 7 KOM. Cultivators are well aware of this, but the audience and the referee on the stage don't understand it, so it's natural for Lin Xueqing to be unconvinced. Zhou Qin had just asked casually, but after Zi Yuan's explanation, she realized that Lin Xueqing was not making trouble for no reason, but it was true. For a moment, she opened her mouth in surprise and looked at Li Yundong. When Li Yundong saw her looking over, he said with a smile, in fact, if Shenren Zi Yuan's control of Jinqi was not exquisite, no matter how vigorous my Jinqi was, it would be useless. Zhou Qin looked at Zi Yuan and then at Li Yundong, secretly admiring and envious of them. Seeing that Li Yundong and Zi Yuan were praising each other, Wan Hongling couldn't help but say, well, you two don't have to flatter each other. It's so disgusting. Zi Yuan glared at Wan Hongling and said angrily, Hongling, you're getting more and more outrageous. Li Yundong coughed dryly and changed the topic. I wonder when we can get the money later. Su Chan also laughed and said coquettishly, you still say that I'm a miser. You are a big miser. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan, if I wasn't a miser, how could I afford to raise you? They chatted and laughed. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, someone came over to inform them to go to the venue to collect the bonus. Li Yundong and the others were all overjoyed, and all of them were beaming with joy. Su Chan was smiling so much that her eyebrows and eyes were almost squeezed together. Even Zi Yuan was smiling. But when Li Yundong and the others arrived at the venue, they didn't see Jing Yuming and the others. Instead, a hot female secretary appeared and handed them a check with a smile. Li Yundong took the check and saw that there was only 800,000 on it. He immediately raised his head and asked in confusion, why only 800,000? Shouldn't it be 2 million? The female secretary said, yes, 2 million is before tax. After tax, it should actually be 1.6 million. At present, Mr. Zheng is a little short on cash, so he only has 800,000 funds. As for the other part of the funds, Mr. Zheng means to use the goods on hand to replace it. Goods? Li Yundong was surprised and said with a strange expression, what goods? Why does it look like a mafia transaction? Can other goods be used to pay off the debt? The female secretary said, there's nothing we can do. All the money that Chief Zheng can take out is here. This was the original plan. We didn't expect that an individual representative would win first place. The other large tea companies can also sell our goods quickly and exchange them for cash, so the other companies know about this. It's just that you guys, only then did Li Yundong understand. Oh my god, there were unspoken rules before the competition, and after winning first place, there was still unspoken rules. F***ck, this works too. Li Yundong was going crazy. He couldn't help but ask angrily, where can we buy so many tea leaves? The female secretary, there's no other way. This is the current situation. You can also choose to give up these tea leaves, but we will regard it as you automatically giving up the reward. Watch net. Wan Hongling said angrily, this is fraud. Li Yundong suppressed his anger and said, aren't you afraid that we'll sue you? The female secretary pretended to be pitiful. We didn't want this either. The company didn't expect such a situation to happen. However, everyone knows this in their hearts. Who could have predicted that you would win the championship? Li Yundong said angrily, so you're blaming us? Seeing his anger, the secretary took a step back in fright and quickly waved her hand. I didn't mean that. Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, suddenly said, what are you going to replace it with? Hearing her speak, the secretary felt as if she had been pardoned. She quickly said, of course, the best Tiguanyin tea. Zhou Qin thought for a moment and said to Li Yundong in a low voice, Zheng Yuming was able to get out of Lu Miaomiao's case, so he must have some official background. It's useless for us to sue them. It's better to take these things and think of another way. Li Yundong also asked in a low voice, do you have any ideas? Zhou Qin said in a low voice, there is a way. Li Yundong nodded and said decisively, well, I believe you. Let's do it this way. He said to the female secretary, okay, I promise you, but you have to write a contract. Otherwise, what if you deny it when the time comes? The female secretary said, of course. Even if you didn't say it, we would have signed a contract with you. As she said this, she waved to a staff member not far away and handed over 2 contracts. Li Yundong took them and handed them to Zhou Qin without looking at them. Zhou Qin carefully looked through the 2 contracts, then handed them back to Li Yundong and nodded. Li Yundong began to sign his name on the contract, but when he filled in the place of delivery, he was worried again. He couldn't help looking at Zhou Qin and asking, where should I fill in this place? Zhou Qin thought for a moment, then said to the female secretary, can you send goods from another place? The female secretary looked hesitant. Another place? Where? Zhou Qin said, Dongwu City. When the female secretary heard this, she quickly shook her head like a rattle. No, it's too far. Zhou Qin didn't stand on ceremony and said, do you want us to drag so many tea leaves back? We all know how unscrupulous you are in this matter. Since we have chosen to make concessions, shouldn't you also make concessions appropriately? Otherwise, we might as well break up. If we expose this matter, no one will end up well. The female secretary saw that Zhou Qin was like a lady from a noble family, and her words were even sharper. She didn't dare to neglect them and quickly said with a smile, I'll go and ask Mr. Zheng. She walked to the side and made a phone call to ask in a low voice. Then she came over and said with a smile, Mr. Zheng said it's okay. If it's a different place, then it's a different place. The goods will be delivered tomorrow, but we are only responsible for delivering the goods. After arriving at the destination, we are not responsible for moving the goods. Zhou Qin immediately said, okay, that's it. Seeing that the 2 of them had reached an agreement, Li Yundong also readily signed the contract. After the group of people came out of the venue, they looked at each other with different expressions. Su Chan looked resentful. 2 million yuan has suddenly become 800,000 yuan. I hate it. Wan Hongling also let out a long sigh. Alas, the assets have shrunk too fast. Even inflation can't be so fast. Zi Yuan smiled and said, money is just a worldly possession. We cultivators shouldn't care so much about gains and losses. Li Yundong also smiled and said, at least 800,000 yuan is out of thin air. 800,000 yuan is not a small amount. Don't be greedy. Seeing that Li Yundong didn't look worried, Su Chan asked curiously, Yundong, weren't you very angry just now? Why are you so happy now? Li Yundong smiled and said, Zhou Qin said that she has a way, so I believe that she has a way, right? As he said this, he winked at Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin smiled confidently and said, well, there is a way. Li Yundong, Wan Hongling, and Su Chan couldn't help but ask curiously, what is it? Zhou Qin said, didn't I say before that there are a few storefronts for rent in the commercial street of Dongwu City? We can buy that storefront and make it a high-end tea house. There is a lot of traffic nearby, and most of them are high-end consumer places. There are many white-collar workers going in and out. If we make an elegant and comfortable tea bar, there should be business. In addition, Jinren Zi Yuan won first place in this year's tea culture competition. There will definitely be no problem promoting this living advertisement. Li Yundong was a rare genius in cultivation, but when it came to business, he was far inferior. Seeing that Zhou Qin had thought things through clearly, he couldn't help but be overjoyed and said, well, I picked up this disciple for free. I'm very happy. I've decided to hold a banquet. Let's go and have a big meal. As soon as he mentioned food, Wan Hongling laughed and said, okay, where are we going to eat? Li Yundong waved his hand and laughed. Let's go back to the Taoist temple and eat vegetarian noodles. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone else laughed. Only Su Chan was a little sad and unhappy. The group of people returned to the Taoist temple of Mount Tianlong. After dinner, everyone went back to their rooms. Li Yundong went to Su Chan's room alone. Before he entered the room, he saw the little girl sitting alone on a stone bench in the courtyard of the courtyard, holding her head with her arms. She was alone. Li Yundong smiled and walked over quietly. Then, he suddenly put his arms around the girl's waist and threatened her with a "Ha! Girl, I want to rob you." Su Chan was startled, but when she heard Li Yundong's voice, she relaxed. She turned around and smiled. "Sir, why are you here?" Li Yundong pinched the girl's nose with a doting expression. "I'm here to see my girl." The girl giggled and said, "Oh," and then didn't say anything else. Li Yundong saw that there was a hint of worry between her brows, and she was not as carefree as usual. His heart skipped a beat and he asked, "Girl, what's wrong with you?" Li Yundong's soft question aroused Su Chan's worries. She raised her head, and her charming face was full of worry. "Sir, do you not like me anymore?" Li Yundong was shocked by the little girl's words. He held her in his arms lovingly and asked softly, "You fool, why did you say that?" Chapter 316. Go to watch net. Su Chan's eyes flashed as she looked up at him. Her red lips opened slightly, as if she had a lot of things on her mind to say, but she swallowed them back down. Watch net. 7 km. Li Yundong gently pinched the tip of the little girl's round nose and said with a smile, "What's wrong? If you have something to say, just say it. We've been together for a long time. What can't we say?" Su Chan was moved by his gentleness. She summoned up her courage and said, "Yundong, do you think I'm useless?" Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why do you say that?" Su Chan said in a daze, "Sister Zi Yuan is very powerful. Not only does she know how to do all kinds of housework, but she is also proficient in the art of tea. Without her this time, we couldn't think of a way to get money. Zhou Qin can also help you manage your business and give you advice, but I don't know anything." As the little girl spoke, her eyes were filled with tears of grievance and sadness. Li Yundong felt pity for her. He held the little girl in his arms and said softly, "You are really a silly girl. Of course, you can do something." The little girl asked with tears in her eyes, "What can I do?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "You will only cause me trouble." Su Chan burst into laughter, but soon she pursed her lips and more tears welled up in her eyes. She choked and said, "Since you've said that, I'm really useless." Li Yundong chuckled and hugged her like he was coaxing a child. "I'm just kidding. You know a lot of things." Su Chan wiped away her tears. "Tell me about it." Li Yundong grabbed the little girl's snow-white hand and pinched it one finger at a time. "Look, first of all, you know how to cultivate. Didn't you teach me how to cultivate? You're the one who introduced me to the school. You're my teacher. Just this alone is already very impressive." The little girl looked at him without blinking. When she heard him talking about the past, she felt warm in her heart and was slightly happy. "You were so stupid back then, even more stupid than me. You didn't know anything, and I was exhausted from teaching you. Watch net." Li Yundong nodded hurriedly. Yes. I'm the stupidest. If it weren't for you, I might have died of stupidity." Li Yundong suddenly laughed. "Do you know how pigs die?" Su Chan recalled the joke she had told Li Yundong the first time they had eaten at McDonald's. She immediately giggled and said, "I died of stupidity." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Yes, you finally know. You see, I'm so stupid, but you still managed to teach me. Don't you feel a sense of accomplishment?" Su Chan was delighted at first, but then she pouted and said unhappily, "You're so stupid, but you're already so powerful. I'm still at the same place." Isn't that even stupider than you? You lied to me just now. Li Yundong hurriedly coaxed, that's not right. It's precisely because I'm stupid that the clumsy bird has to fly first. You're a dignified fox immortal. Naturally, you'll catch up with me after a short nap. Su Chan knew that Li Yundong was saying this to coax her. She also knew that with Li Yundong's aptitude, as long as he continued to cultivate, she would never be able to catch up with him in this life. Fortunately, Su Chan felt that her becoming stronger was far less than Li Yundong's, which made her even happier. However, Li Yundong's cultivation had suddenly surpassed her, and she couldn't help him in the past. It was as if she had become a dispensable person. Su Chan felt lost and sad. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong eagerly and said, well, you don't have to coax me. I know all about it. I can't do housework, I can't cook, I can't do anything. The only thing I can do is cultivate. Now that you've surpassed me, I'm useless to you. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan, shouting in a low voice, nonsense. Why are you useless to me? Su Chan pouted and tugged at the corner of her clothes with her fingers. What can I do? When other cultivators see you with me, they all say that you've abandoned yourself. I'm so sad to hear that. Li Yundong laughed and said, what others say has nothing to do with us. My family's little girl is very capable. They are envious, jealous, and hateful. Su Chan raised her head. What can I do? Li Yundong smiled and said, when we open a shop in the future, I can be the boss, and you can be the proprietress. Now I am the leader of the Fox Zen School. In the future, you can be the wife of the leader of the Fox Zen School. In the future, I will accept many disciples, and you can also be my wife. Li Yundong smiled as he described the future. Think about it. In the future, when we open a store, if business is good, we can open a second one. If we open a second one, there will be a third and a fourth one. Wow, when we open a chain store, you will be the big boss. You will have millions of men under your command, and everyone will respond to you with a single call. When people see you, they will respectfully call you boss. Wow, how impressive. Su Chan giggled and pressed her cheek against his broad and strong chest. She stared at him with sparkling eyes, listening to him with infatuation. Watch net. Li Yundong waved his hand and continued, why, don't you think it's impressive enough? Well, in the future, I will accept a large number of disciples, and then the disciples will accept more disciples, and then the disciples of the disciples will accept more disciples. At that time, they will spread their branches and leaves. Wow, there will be disciples all over the country. When they see you, they will call you Master's wife, Grandmaster's wife, and, well, Master's wife. What should you call her? Su Chan's cheeks were slightly red. She hid her face in Li Yundong's arms, revealing only one eye that was smiling like a crescent moon. She giggled and said, I don't know. Li Yundong thought for a moment and simply said, then call me Empress Dowager. Wow, look at how impressive you are. When you go out, there will be disciples and grandchildren leading the way in front of you, and there will be disciples serving you carefully shouting, Empress Dowager is getting on the sedan chair. TSK, TSK, when the time comes, even the real Empress Dowager will not be as impressive as you. Su Chan giggled and said angrily, you're so annoying. You're the Empress Dowager. No, you're the Empress Dowager Shaoli. Li Yundong was stunned. Oh my god, it's really appropriate. Isn't my surname Li? Seeing Li Yundong's dull look, Su Chan was amused. She deliberately put on a straight face, coughed, and said in a crisp voice, Shaoli, I'm going to get on the sedan chair. Li Yundong laughed and said, silly, who said that they were going to get on the sedan chair? That's what others say. Su Chan had obviously gotten into her role. She put her hands on her hips and said angrily, are you the Empress Dowager or am I? Seeing that the little girl was rarely happy, Li Yundong played with her. He put on a careful face and said with a flattering smile, "You are, of course you are the Empress Dowager." As he said this, he flapped his sleeves and mimicked the eunuchs in the Qing dynasty plays, saying in a shrill voice, "The Empress Dowager is getting on the sedan chair." Su Chan giggled uncontrollably. Seeing that Su Chan wasn't moving, Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why isn't the Empress Dowager moving?" Su Chan deliberately put on a straight face and said pretentiously, "Moving? Where is the sedan chair?" Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He quickly squatted down slightly in front of the little girl, turned his head and smiled at her. "I'm coming. Shaoli will carry you back to the Palace of Compassionate Peace." Su Chan burst into laughter. She jumped onto Li Yundong's back with a smile, wrapped her hands around his neck, and whispered in his ear, "Master, you're so kind to me." Seeing that the little girl had stopped acting, Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Of course. If I'm not good to you, who should I be good to?" Su Chan giggled. She rested her head on Li Yundong's shoulder and greedily sniffed the strong masculine scent on his body. The little girl thought of all the things Li Yundong had done for her and suddenly became a little infatuated. Her eyes were a little moist, and she murmured, "Did I do something good in my last life that made me meet you?" Li Yundong knew that she was talking nonsense, so he chuckled and said, "Wrong. I broke 300 wooden fish in my last life before I met you." Hearing this, Su Chan was immediately amused. "That's what I said to my master last time." But when it came to her master, her face suddenly became gloomy again. Su Chan said in a low voice, "I don't know how my master is now. I'm living a happy life here, but I don't know where she is suffering." When Li Yundong heard the little girl mention Ao Wushuang, his heart also became heavy for a moment. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "Speaking of this matter, it's really complicated and I don't know where to start. The world is so big. Where can I find Yen Fang? Even Zi Yuan doesn't know her whereabouts. This woman has endured in the Fox Zen school for 9 years. I really can't imagine how long she will endure this time." Hearing this, Su Chan became even more silent and frowned. After a long time, she sighed softly and said, "I'm so worried about my master. When I think of this, I feel like I can't breathe. It's so uncomfortable." Li Yundong gently stroked the little girl's head and said, "How about this? I'll ask around. Logically speaking, I am now the leader of the Fox Zen school, and Ao Wushuang is also a senior of the Fox Zen school. Whether it's reasonable or personal, I should rescue her as soon as possible." Su Chan sighed softly and said, "It would be great if someone had cultivated karmic connection." Li Yundong was stunned and said, "Karmic connection? Karmic connection, one of the 5 great Shintong of Buddhism." As Li Yundong spoke, he suddenly slapped his thigh and said loudly, "Yes, why didn't I think of it?" As he slapped his thigh, Su Chan, who was behind him, suddenly cried out. She covered her leg and complained loudly, "Why did you slap my leg?" Li Yundong hunched Su Chan on his back and said with a smile, Sorry. It's a little inconvenient to slap my own leg in this position, so I had to slap your leg." Su Chan said angrily, "How is it inconvenient? You obviously did it on purpose." She suddenly thought of something and asked, "Do you know about karmic connection?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Of course I know. According to the Surangama Sutra, there are 5 great Shintong of Buddhism, namely, the heavenly eye, the heavenly ear, the heavenly mind, the divine foot, the karmic connection, and the karmic connection. Karmic connection means that one can see through the past karma of all living beings and see the unknown and future." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong and couldn't help sighing. "In the past, you didn't know anything. Now I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "I know a person who can use karmic connection. Maybe he can help you find your master's whereabouts." Su Chan couldn't help being overjoyed and quickly asked, "Who?" Chapter 317. Go to watch net. Su Chan asked ecstatically, but Li Yundong was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he said, "I thought you had been taken away by the monks of Shiyuan Temple, so I rushed to save you, but I didn't expect to let 2 golden snakes go. Do you still remember this? Go to watch net. 7 KOM. Su Chan blinked her eyes and didn't understand why Li Yundong would say that. She said, "I remember, but does this have anything to do with destiny?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Of course it has something to do with it. I remember that the abbot of Shiyuan Temple once said that he had a disciple who could predict the future. I didn't pay attention at that time, but now that you mentioned it, I remember. Isn't the disciple of the abbot of Shiyuan Temple practicing karmic connection?" Su Chan was overjoyed. "Then let's go find him now, shall we?" Li Yundong patted the little girl on the forehead and said with a smile, "Look at how anxious you are. It's so late. Doesn't the monk need to rest? Have a good rest tonight. We'll rush over early tomorrow morning." Su Chan beamed with joy and nodded vigorously. Li Yundong carried the little girl into the room and put her on the bed. He knew that Su Chan was worried about Ao Wushuang, so he didn't joke with her too much. He just covered her with a thin quilt and said softly, "Don't worry, your master is just sealed. Although Yan Fang hates her to the core, she is now a young spirit body and can't use magical items. She can't do anything to your master." Su Chan got under the quilt and watched Li Yundong tuck the quilt for her. When Li Yundong was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly called out in a low voice, "Master." Li Yundong turned his head and smiled. "Girl, what's wrong?" Su Chan rolled her eyes, suddenly got up, hugged Li Yundong, and kissed him hard on the cheek. Then she quickly let go and got under the quilt with a smile, only revealing a pair of extremely beautiful and intelligent eyes. She said with a sweet smile, "It's so good to have you here." Li Yundong chuckled. "You fool." With that, he walked out of the room. At dawn the next day, after everyone had woken up, Li Yundong saw that Zi Yuan, Wan Hongling, Zhou Qin, and Su Chan had all come to his room, so he told them what he and Su Chan had discussed last night. After that, he said, "I thought about it all night and felt that the matter of Ao Wushuang couldn't be delayed, lest a long night brings trouble. But today is the day Zheng Yuming and the others deliver the goods. It's not good for there to be no one in Dongwu City. I think it's better for us to split up." Zi Yuan also nodded and said to Li Yunyang, "Hongling and I will go back to Dongwu City. Why don't you and Su Chan stay here to inquire about Ao Wushuang's whereabouts? Watch net." Li Yundong nodded and said, "I think so too." Then he turned his head and looked at Zhou Qin. "What about you?" "My cultivation is mainly based on the Niden sect. If I want to learn talisman magic, I don't know where to learn it." Su Chan blinked and said, "If you have the immortal pen, you can draw any talisman you want." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Didn't you hear what Zi Yuan said? This is the magical item of the great grandmasters Wuxia of the Danding sect. It has disappeared for more than 1,000 years. How could it still be in the world?" Su Chan pouted and snorted. "I hope all the good magical items in the world are ours." Li Yundong laughed and tapped her nose. "Little girl, you should be content." Zhou Qin looked around at the talismans and brocade pouches hanging on the merit forest and sighed. "When I came to the temple before, I saw people burning incense and worshipping Buddha, and some people hanging these talismans to pray for blessings. I laughed at them for being superstitious, but now it seems that I was ignorant." Li Yundong chuckled and said meaningfully, "God is fair to people. He closed the door of the previous world for you, but opened the door of the cultivation world for you. Zhou Qin was stunned when she heard this. Thinking about the profound meaning of Li Yundong's words, she didn't feel a little silly. When Li Yundong and the others passed through the Merit Forest, a middle-aged monk was waiting at the exit. Li Yundong looked over and saw that it was the middle-aged monk who had fought with him last time. He hurried forward, put his palms together, and said respectfully, "Master, we meet again. I offended you last time, but you haven't apologized. I'm really sorry." The middle-aged monk smiled slightly and returned the salute. "Junrenli, you're too polite. As the saying goes, no fight, no deal. Without the last fight, how would I have known that Junrenli could repel the joint attack of the 6 great sects? Your reputation is well deserved." Li Yundong laughed and said, "I'm ashamed. I haven't asked for your name, master." The middle-aged monk smiled and said, "I'm Feikong. Junrenli, please come in. The abbot is waiting for you." As he spoke, he glanced at Zhou Qin and Su Chan. When his eyes swept over Su Chan, Feikong frowned slightly, but soon relaxed. He thought to himself, "This fox spirit is really beautiful. I have cultivated for more than 40 years, but at first glance, my foundation was almost shaken. The danger of beauty is really powerful." But when his eyes fell on Zhou Qin, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help thinking to himself, "This woman is obviously a virgin, but why does she have Yuanyang Jinqi in her body? It's extremely rare for a mysterious Yin body to have such Yuanyang Qi. Could this woman be a cultivation genius that has not been seen in 100 years? It was easy for a man to cultivate, but difficult for a woman to cultivate. This was a well-known truth in the cultivation world, but once a woman succeeded in cultivation, she would be a great master. Feikong looked Zhou Qin up and down and sighed in his heart. He couldn't help but say, "Benefactress, may I ask if you have a master?" Zhou Qin came from a noble family and behaved very politely. She smiled slightly and said, "Yes." Feikong was disappointed. "Ah. Who is it?" Zhou Qin smiled and said, "He's far away, but close at hand." Only then did Feikong understand. He put his palms together and said enviously, "Junrenli, you are so lucky to have such a good disciple. I'm very envious." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Monks pay attention to the emptiness of worldly desires. Aren't you tempted by the mundane?" Feikong retorted, "Otherwise, the way of cultivation focuses on one's own cultivation, and secondly on the teaching of disciples. If Hongren, the 5th patriarch of Buddhism, hadn't found a good disciple like Huineng, how could we have the glory of the 6th patriarch's Huineng Zen sect unifying the world in the future?" Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Yes, this monk is right. I can't do everything myself in the future, can I? It's okay now. If I become famous in the future, people will come to challenge me all day long. Won't I die of exhaustion? Li Yundong understood and decided to teach Zhou Qin cultivation when he went back. He put his palms together and said gratefully, "Master, you're right. I've learned a lot." Feikong smiled and returned the salute. "You're welcome, Junrenli." The two of them talked along the way, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the Zen room of the abbot. Feikong glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin and said, "Benefactors, would you like to follow me to the room next door to have a rest for a while?" As a demon, Su Chan was naturally afraid of such an important place of Buddhism. How could she be willing to leave Li Yundong's side? She grabbed the corner of Li Yundong's clothes tightly with both hands and refused to let go. She looked at him eagerly, for fear that he would nod and agree. Zhou Qin was good at observing people's expressions, so she said, "Does this Buddhist land also value men more than women?" Hearing this, Feikong was stunned and didn't know how to answer for a moment. Just as he was feeling embarrassed, he heard the voice of an old man in the Zen room laughing and saying, "Amitba, Buddha once said that all living beings in the world are equal. How can there be such a thing as valuing men over women? Feikong, go ahead and let them in. Only then did Feikong put his palms together and turn to leave. After Li Yundong watched Feikong leave, he took Su Chan and Zhou Qin into the Zen room. As soon as he entered the room, he saw Purin sitting on the bed, holding a string of Buddha beads in one hand and smiling at him. "We meet again, Jinrenli," Purin said with a smile. Li Yundong bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, greetings, Master Purin." Purin glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin faintly, his expression unchanged. He looked at Li Yundong and said, "Jinrenli, you must have come here for something. If you have something to say, you might as well say it." Seeing that Purin was so straightforward, Li Yundong didn't beat around the bush and simply told him what had happened. Finally, he said, "As the leader of the Fox Zen school, I know that the cultivators of other sects in the cultivation world think that I have given up on myself, but how can they know my determination to reorganize the Fox Zen school? Now that the seniors of our Fox Zen school have disappeared, I thought about it and had no choice but to ask you for help. If you don't help me, I'm afraid I'll be at a loss." Purin nodded slightly and chuckled. After thinking for a while, he said, "Since you are determined to manage the Fox Zen school into a famous and decent sect, this is a matter of boundless merit and virtue. Buddha will be very happy to know about it." Back then, the founder of the Fox Zen school, Pan Shi, had some connections with our Buddhism. However, later, the mystical silver fox got in the way, so we turned friends into enemies. Now that the Fox Zen school has fallen into the hands of Jinrenli, it seems that there is hope for it to be revived. Naturally, I should help Jinrenli with such a good thing. As he said this, he picked up a copper bell beside him and shook it gently. After a while, a young monk came in from the door and saluted respectfully. "Master, what can I do for you?" Purin smiled and said, "Fanning, take them to my disappointing disciple." Fanning was shocked and looked embarrassed. "Master, you want me to go? This is not good, is it?" Purin said in a deep voice, "Buddha said, if I don't go to hell, who will? How can I be picky about this kind of thing?" Fanning's face suddenly became bitter and he thought to himself, "Yes, you said yourself that you won't go to hell. Who will go to hell? Why don't you go to hell yourself? Why me?" But he didn't dare to say such words, nor did he dare to go against Purin's will. He bowed and said to Li Yundong reluctantly, "Please come with me." Li Yundong followed him curiously and thought to himself, "Where is Purin's disciple who can use the karmic connection? Why does he say that if I don't go to hell, who will? Why is it so scary?" Chapter 318. Go to watch net. Purin, the abbot of Shiyuan Temple, watched Li Yunyang and the others leave. After a while, Feikong came in, put his palms together, and asked, "Master, why are you helping him? This person has had a conflict with our Shiyuan Temple before, and the disciples have a lot of criticism in private. Moreover, his reputation in the cultivation world is extremely bad. If we deal with him, will it?" Purin didn't wait for him to finish speaking. He looked up at the middle-aged monk and said leisurely, "Feikong, when you became my disciple, I named you Feikong. The original intention was to let you understand the meaning of the four elements being empty. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. The cultivation of the young disciples is still shallow, and the world is so complicated and tempting. I can understand that they can't understand, but you've been with me for dozens of years, and you still haven't understood this point. You shouldn't. Feikong looked ashamed and bowed. "Master, please teach me." Purin stood up and said, "The four elements of Buddha are empty. The sky is empty, the earth is empty, the mountains and the oceans are empty, and even your physical body and divine sense are empty. But only the great way of Buddha is real. I don't care what others think of us, but I have to consider how our dharma will be passed on in the future and how it will be carried forward. Generally, I observed his behavior and saw that he is a righteous person who abhors evil. I observed his words and saw that he is a down-to-earth person who does not boast. Finally, I observed his appearance and saw that he is surrounded by beautiful women, but he is still a boy with yuanyang body, and the women around him are also virgins with yuanyin body. It can be seen that he is a cultivator with great determination and is not greedy for beauty. A person with great determination and great ambition will definitely be able to achieve great things in the future. Regardless of his talent, based on these 2 points, I can conclude that he will be a great cultivator in the future, and his achievements will not be inferior to the leaders of the contemporary sections. As Purin spoke, he walked to the window, opened the wooden window, pointed to the big tree in the garden, and said, however, it is not enough for a person to have great determination and great ambition. Look at this tree. Even if it can grow into a towering tree, it may still grow crooked. Trees are like this, and so are people. If a person harbors evil intentions, then his determination and ambition will become a sin for him to commit evil in the future. Once such a person commits evil, it will be 100 times worse than an ordinary person. Purin turned around and continued, so, I carefully observed his face again. I saw him look straight at me twice. His eyes were clear and bright, without the slightest evil thoughts or crooked thoughts, and his eyebrows were even more awe-inspiring. Therefore, I believe that this person will definitely be a great cultivator in our righteous way in the future. Purin glanced at Feikong and sighed, Feikong, you're not the head abbot, so you don't understand my difficulties. Although our Shiyuan temple is quite famous in Dongwu City, it is far inferior to the 4 famous temples. Moreover, the Taoists in Dongwu City are very powerful, and the forces of Zhengyi school and the 6 great sects are spreading here. In the near future, they will hold the Taoist assembly here, which is held every 4 years in the cultivation world. If our Shiyuan temple does not make some strong external help, not only will we not be able to cope with the erosion of these sects, but I'm afraid that we will also be unable to support the great calamity of the cultivation world in the future. Feikong looked puzzled and asked, Master, why don't we ask for help from other Buddhist sects? Purin shook his head. Since ancient times, there has been no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. The same is true of our Buddhist sections. Go to the net. 7 KOM. Today, Shiyuan Temple has asked for help from other Buddhist sections. In the future, even if you win against them, they will gossip. Let me tell you something. There was a woman who needed help from Guanyin, so she devoutly recited the name of Guanyin Bodhisattva in front of the statue of Guanyin every day. Every day, she recited it thousands or even tens of thousands of times. But one day, her son suddenly asked her, You pray to Guanyin Bodhisattva every day, but if something happens to Guanyin Bodhisattva, who will she turn to? As he spoke, Purin looked at Feikong with a smile. Feikong, if you were Guanyin Bodhisattva, who would you turn to? Feikong suddenly understood. He put his palms together and said, It's better to ask for help than to ask for help from others. Purin put his palms together and said with a smile, That's right. Instead of humbly begging other Buddhist peers, it's better for us to find some strong help ourselves. Jinrenli is now in the stage where he has just emerged. I dare say that he will definitely be a hero in the future and will be an earth-shattering figure. If we don't make friends with him now, when will we? Feikong showed a look of admiration. Master, you are far-sighted. I am far inferior to you. But after he finished speaking, he thought of something and couldn't help but show a strange expression. He said, But, Master, aren't you afraid that your disciple will cause you trouble again? When Purin heard this, he couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. He was stunned for a while and suddenly smiled bitterly. Amitabha, then I can only let Jinrenli pray for himself. At this time, Li Yundong was walking out of the temple with a young disciple of Purin. He talked to the monk named Fanning and said, "Master, where are we going?" Zhou Qin and Su Chan could be said to be a stunning beauty in the world, while Su Chan was a beautiful fox spirit. No matter which one of them, they would give a great impact to men, especially young monks who did not have enough cultivation. Fanning didn't look sideways along the way and didn't dare to look at Su Chan and Zhou Qin at all. He looked down, as if he wanted to seal all his 7 apertures divine senses. At this time, when he saw Li Yundong talking to him, he had no choice but to quickly return the salute and say, "I don't deserve to be called a master. You can just call me Fanning. I don't know where he's going, but this senior martial brother of mine is very unruly and his whereabouts are always uncertain. I think it will take a lot of effort to find him." Li Yundong asked in confusion, "I see that your abbot is using his cell phone. Doesn't he have a cell phone to contact him?" Fanning smiled bitterly and said, "Whatever valuable things my senior brother has on him, he will pawn them as soon as possible." Li Yundong was taken aback. "Could it be that your Shixiang is a gambling addict?" Fanning shook his head and said, No, my senior brother doesn't like to gamble." Li Yundong's face was filled with confusion. "What's the reason?" Fanning said with a strange expression, "You'll know when you get there. Watch net. 7 KOM. They got in the taxi. Fanning sat in front of the car and said to the driver, "Master, go to Muda Hong Kong Street." When Li Yundong heard the name of the place, he was shocked. He thought he had heard wrong, so he quickly asked, "Where are we going?" Fanning coughed dryly. "Muda Hong Kong Street." Li Yundong stammered, Isn't this the red light district?" Fanning's expression became more and more strange. "Yes." Li Yundong was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Your senior martial brother is in such a place?" Fanning looked ashamed. "Yes." Li Yundong's eyes widened, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. Zhou Qin, who was beside him, also had a strange look on her face and was also speechless. Su Chan comforted him and said, "Yundong, not all the people there are debauchery. It's possible that this master is there." Towards the end, she couldn't go on. What was a monk doing in the red light district? Su Chan said with a dry smile, "Maybe he is cultivating in the secular world." Hearing this, Li Yundong quickly nodded as if to comfort himself. "Well, it's possible. A master is naturally a bit maverick." It was in the morning, and there was no traffic on the road. After about 20 minutes, they arrived at Muda Hong Kong Street. At this time in the morning, most of the entertainment places here were closed. The streets were very deserted, in sharp contrast to the bright lights of the last time Li Yundong had been here. Fanning took Li Yundong around for a while, then said with a wry smile, "It's not time yet. I can't find him yet." Li Yundong asked in confusion, "When can we find him?" Fanning said with a strange expression, "Probably after 4 or 5 in the afternoon." Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why at this time?" Zhou Qin couldn't bear to listen anymore. She pulled Li Yundong aside and said with a slightly red face, 4 or 5 in the afternoon is the time when the entertainment city opens. Li Yundong asked, "Why? Why does it open at this time?" As a girl, Zhou Qin had to explain this kind of thing to a boy, which was really a little embarrassing. She coughed dryly and said very unnaturally, "Because this is the time when most men get off work. Even if they are asked by their wives at home, they can say that they are working overtime. At this time, their families will not be suspicious, so many men choose this time to come." "Ahem, you know." Li Yundong suddenly understood. He said in a strange tone, "I don't know, but you know very well." Zhou Qin blushed and said angrily, "I'm explaining it to you, aren't I? You're so annoying. I won't tell you next time." Li Yundong quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Don't mind me. I just said it casually. Don't think too much." As he said this, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Fanning with a strange expression. Master Fanning, you also know very well. Fanning's face was full of embarrassment and shame. He was originally from the south of the Yangtze River, and he was fair and clean. This time, his face was as red as a cooked prawn. He stammered, I also heard it from my senior brother. Li Yundong took a deep breath and couldn't help sighing. Your senior brother is really a weirdo in the monk world. I just don't know his name. Fanning put his palms together and said, my senior brother's original name is Ding Zonglei, and his Buddhist name is Wuhua. Li Yundong asked curiously, since your senior brother is a disciple of Master Purin, shouldn't he also be in the Dharma generation? Fanning smiled bitterly and said, in theory, that's the case, but my senior brother disliked the name given by Master Purin, so he changed it to Wuhua himself. He took it from the meaning of Tang Bohu's poem, no flowers, no wine, no hose, no fields. Li Yundong also smiled bitterly and said, this is the first time I've heard of such a maverick monk in this world. Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, saw that there was a hint of worry between Li Yundong's brows. It was obvious that he was worried that this monk was just a nominal monk. She comforted him and said, you don't have to worry. Maybe this master is a first-class figure in Jijian. Hearing this, Li Yundong was relieved. He nodded and said with a smile, yes, what you said makes sense. I was overthinking it. Fanning said, it's too early to come now. Why don't we come again in the evening? My senior brother has always been elusive. They saw that the monk had been beaten black and blue, and he was lying on the ground with a dirty face. He didn't look like a master at all. Li Yundong couldn't help shouting in his heart, damn it, this guy is not Wuhua, this guy is not Wuhua. But at this time, Fanning suddenly shouted in surprise, Xixiang. This sentence sent Li Yundong to hell. He immediately burst into tears and said, damn it, this guy really doesn't have any flowers. The master is really a master. Wuhua. I think he's a greedy man. Merry Christmas, everyone. Tang Tang, I had a stiff neck yesterday and the pain in my neck was unbearable. Today, I went out for a massage. Chapter 319. Go to watch net. When Wuhua heard Fanning's voice, he immediately raised his head. There were still 2 blood-red nostrils hanging under his nose. He looked surprised. Shirdi, you came at the right time. Lend me 600 yuan. When he said this, Fanning almost wanted to find a hole to crawl into. His face was purplish red, and he hummed and hawed for a long time. He dilly-dallied and refused to approach. Go to watch net. 7 K.O.M. Mei Nyang saw Li Yundong and the others and Fanning at a glance. She first said with a happy face, oh, isn't this Boss Li? How come you have time to come here today? Hey, it's really embarrassing for you to see this. Wait a minute, I'll deal with things here. With that, she turned around and glared at Fanning, saying, hey, is he your Xixiang? Is it great to be a monk? Don't you want to pay? Hurry up and pay the 600 yuan for him. Look at so many people here. Even if you're not ashamed, I'm ashamed for you. While she was talking, there were already many people gathered on the side of the road. Many people pointed at the scene and snickered. Fanning's face was as red as cinnabar. He searched all over his body and finally found 500 yuan. He said in a low voice, that's all I have. Mei Nyang's eyes swept over them and she snatched them away. After a rough count, a smile suddenly appeared on her cold face. Since you're paying, it's easy. Although the amount isn't right, seeing that you're monks, I'll give you a discount. After that, she turned around and giggled at Li Yundong. Boss Li, I've missed you for a long time. How come you have time to play today? Mei Niang glanced at Su Chan and Zhou Qin beside him and said in a sweet voice, if you want to play, just come and play. Why did you bring your friends here? We don't have a place to entertain female guests. Zhou Qin's face changed when she heard this, and she glared at Mei Niang. Su Chan made a face at her and said, how shameless. We're here to look for someone. Mei Niang asked curiously, looking for someone? Who are you looking for in this place? Those who come here are either guests or prostitutes. As she spoke, she glanced at Wu Hua and rolled her eyes. Could it be that you're looking for him? At this time, Wu Hua had already gotten up. His kasaya was wrinkled and covered in dirt. He looked as miserable as one could imagine. For a moment, Li Yunyang and the others were all embarrassed. They looked away one after another, not daring to admit that they had come to find Wu Hua. Mei Niang's heart was as clear as a mirror. She sneered and rolled her eyes at Zhou Qin and Su Chan. You came to find a customer who doesn't pay, yet you're still so arrogant. Really, what kind of world is this? As she spoke, she turned around and walked back into the shop. Li Yundong felt like he was going crazy. What kind of world is this? Was this country really flourishing with prostitutes? Fanning waited for the people around him to disperse a little before he suppressed his shame and asked Wu Hua, Xixiao, what's wrong with you? Wu Hua patted the dust off his body and let out a long sigh. His originally embarrassed and dirty face actually showed a dignified look. Alas, I saw a female benefactor with a lot of wisdom here in the past few days. Originally, I wanted to enlighten her, so I went up to talk to her. I didn't expect that after chatting with her for 2 hours, she actually asked me to give her money for 2 hours when I came out. I went to the internet. 7 KOM. I'm just a monk. Where did I get the money? So I had to ask them for alms first, and then give it to them. Who would have thought that I would be treated like this? Alas, the moral degeneration of the world is getting worse and worse. At this time, Li Yundong and the others suddenly understood. Su Chan's mind was simple. She looked at Wu Hua with admiration and said, Master, you are so amazing. You can actually lie in the mud to enlighten all living beings. Zhou Qin said doubtfully, do you have to choose such a place to enlighten all living beings? Do you want to be a whoremaster? Wu Hua's face was solemn. Buddha was also a beggar. Why can't I be a whoremaster? At this time, Li Yundong was also a little confused. He thought to himself, is this guy a perverted monk or an eminent monk? He looked like a perverted monk just now, but now listening to his words, there was actually a hidden meaning in his words, vaguely like an eminent monk. Li Yundong thought for a moment, coughed dryly, and said, Master Wu Hua, I have something to ask of you. I wonder if you have time. Only then did Wu Hua turn his face and look at Li Yundong. He smiled slightly and said, Jinren, right? Li Yundong asked curiously, how do you know my surname? Oh, by the way, Mei Niang mentioned it before. Wu Hua shook his head and said, no, I took a lesson a few days ago. I had expected that you would come to me, so I have been going in and out of this place recently. Li Yundong was surprised. You guessed that I would come here. Then why didn't I see you last time? Wu Hua smiled slightly. The time is not right. Naturally, we can't meet. Seeing that Wu Hua's words were full of deep meaning, Li Yundong's suspicion of him was reduced a little, but he still had some doubts in his heart. He said, since you expected to see me here, how could you not expect to be thrown out in such a mess? Li Yundong's words were very rude, but Wu Hua's face was calm and unfathomable. He put his palms together and said, Amitba, how can a doctor cure himself? My fatality skill can help you, Jinren, but it can't help me. Seeing that Wu Hua even knew the purpose of his trip, Li Yundong no longer had any doubts. He said respectfully, it turns out that you are indeed a master like Ji Dian. I was too naive. Wu Hua smiled and said, it doesn't matter. Junrenli, wait a moment. I'll talk to that female benefactor and come back. This time, my main purpose is to purify her. Let's go. As he said this, he pointed to a pretty woman standing at the gate of Crystal Love International Entertainment City not far away. Li Yundong looked in the direction of his finger and saw that the woman was very beautiful. She was delicate and pitiful, and she couldn't hide her flirtatiousness. He thought to himself, this master is really good at choosing people to purify. He actually chose such a beautiful and sexy woman. It seems that he's also a lascivious monk. But on second thought, he couldn't help thinking, isn't it the same for me? Su Chan is beautiful, and Zhou Qin is even more beautiful. Not to mention Zi Yuan, she can be said to be a national beauty. What do they think of me? What right do I have to criticize Wu Hua? Thinking of this, Li Yundong suddenly felt relieved. He saw Wu Hua walk up to the woman and whisper something, but the woman kept wiping her tears and looking at Wu Hua with tears in her eyes. The two of them said goodbye reluctantly, as if they were reluctant to part with each other. Li Yundong watched from the side and felt strange. He thought to himself, is this master going to purify people or pick up girls? Beside him, Su Chan sighed with emotion in her heart, this master is not afraid of people's words to purify such a woman. He really has the demeanor of an eminent monk. However, Zhou Qin couldn't help looking at Wu Hua and the woman up and down, thinking to herself, this monk is not pure. He speaks in a dignified manner. He can hide it from Li Yundong, but he can't hide it from me. After Wu Hua finished talking to the woman, Wu Hua walked up to Li Yundong and put his palms together. Junrenli, I've kept you waiting for a long time. Let's go. Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, since I have something to ask of you, why don't you go to my place? I hope you don't mind. Wu Hua chuckled and said freely, I can even go to this red light district. Why can't I go to the fox's den? When Li Yundong heard this, he couldn't help but dispel his doubts about Wu Hua. He smiled and said, thank you. As he said this, he glanced at Fanning beside him and said, Master Fanning, do you want to go with me? Fanning thought to himself, it's already bad luck for me to accompany you to this red light district to find Shixiang. How can I accompany you to the fox's den? Shixiang's cultivation is profound, but my cultivation is low. If I go to that kind of place, will I survive? Fanning shook his head like a rattle drum and begged for mercy, Junrenli, please spare me. I have to go back quickly. After that, he didn't have time to say goodbye to his Shixiang. Along the way, he lowered his head and looked straight ahead. He recited scriptures and suddenly fled the erotic red light street. Wu Hua looked at his figure, shook his head, and sighed. Pink skeletons are pink. My Shixiang still can't see through them. Li Yundong said with admiration, Master, you play the world of mortals without getting involved. You're admirable. They stopped a car on the road and then headed for Mount Tianlong. Before getting in the car, Zhou Qin noticed that when Wu Hua got in the car, he glanced behind him intentionally or unintentionally. Zhou Qin saw his action and smiled in her heart, becoming more and more convinced of her judgment. When they arrived at the Fox Zen school of Mount Tianlong, Li Yundong walked into the Taoist temple with Wu Hua. The two little foxes, who were cleaning the front hall of the Taoist temple, saw a bald monk walking in with the leader. They looked at Wu Hua curiously from a distance and whispered to each other. Hey, why did the leader bring a bald donkey back? I don't know. It's so strange. Is he going to do the first 7 rites for the Grand Master? I don't know, but you should say the former Grand Master. But if he wants to do the first 7 rites, it seems that a bald donkey is a little too little. Li Yundong heard the two little foxes whispering to each other, and the word bald donkey kept coming out of their mouths. He glanced at Wu Hua awkwardly, only to see that Wu Hua's expression was as usual. While admiring him in his heart, he couldn't help sighing, these little foxes really lack discipline. He turned his head, glared at the two little foxes, and shouted, "What are you talking about? Go and do your own things." Li Yundong had already established his dominance in the gazebo behind the school. As soon as he shouted at them, the two little foxes shuddered in fear. They looked at each other and ran to the other houses, slamming the door shut behind them. Only pairs of curious and frightened eyes could be seen peeking out from the crack of the door. Li Yundong was shocked. Seeing this scene, Wu Hua smiled slightly and said, "Zhenren is so powerful." Li Yundong laughed dryly and said, "My disciples are naughty. I'm sorry to make you laugh." After they arrived at Li Yundong's residence, Li Yundong saw that Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, Zhuang Yiting, and the others were also alarmed, so he greeted them with a smile. Li Yundong glanced around and asked casually, "Why isn't Zhang Sun Hong here?" Chao Yi, Zhuang Yiting, and Lu Yuehong looked at each other, and Chao Yi quickly said, "Fourth Shiji is cultivating in the backyard." Li Yundong didn't take it seriously and just roughly explained what had happened. Chao Yi and the others were surprised and delighted. They said to Wu Hua one after another, "Master Wu Hua, you don't mind our Fox Zen school coming here with a bad reputation. Everyone in the Fox Zen school is grateful for your kindness. If you can help us find the whereabouts of junior sister Wushuang, we will definitely thank you." Li Yundong laughed and said, "You guys are really good at flattering me. As the leader, I don't have anything to say." His words made everyone around him burst into laughter. Li Yundong smiled, turned around, and said to Wu Hua, "Master, please use your supernatural power to help us find Yan Fang's whereabouts." However, Wu Hua turned his head, looked at Chao Yi and the others, and said, "The law can't be spread to 6 ears. One person had 2 ears, 2 people had 4 ears, and 3 people had 6 ears." The meaning of Wu Hua's words was too obvious. Chao Yi and the others immediately came to their senses and said to Li Yundong, "Leader, we'll go down first." After Chao Yi and the others left, Wu Hua still stared at Zhou Qin and Su Chan, still refusing to speak. Zhou Qin had no choice but to say to Li Yundong, "Master, I have something to do first." Su Chan was the only one who refused to leave, relying on her close relationship with Li Yundong and asking about the whereabouts of her master. However, when Wu Hua saw that she didn't leave, he also refused to speak. He just looked down, put his palms together, and recited the scriptures silently. Seeing that he didn't speak, Su Chan reached out and pulled at Li Yundong's sleeve, looking at him with a pitiful expression. Seeing her like this, Li Yundong couldn't help but plead for her. "Master Wu Hua, Su Chan is my girlfriend, and Ao Wushuang, who was taken away by Yan Fang, is her master. She is not an outsider. Don't you need to leave?" Wu Hua didn't even look at him and repeated, "The law can't be spread to 6 ears." Li Yundong saw that Wu Hua's attitude was firm. Anyway, only 2 people could say it, not 3. It was up to him to decide which 2. He couldn't help but say to Su Chan with a wry smile, "Then I'll leave for a while." No matter how childish Su Chan was, she knew that there was no reason for Li Yundong to avoid the matter. She had no choice but to say unhappily, then I'll go." She looked at Li Yundong eagerly, then at Wu Hua. She walked to the door and said pitifully, "Then I'll go." Li Yundong smiled and said, "It's not a life and death separation. Why do you have to make it so scary?" Su Chan nodded and turned to leave. Li Yundong turned around and said to Wu Hua, "Master, now there are only 4 ears left. Can you tell me?" However, Wu Hua smiled slightly, raised his eyes to look at the door, and said in a clear voice, "Come out. Why are you hiding? Do you think that this little invisibility technique can hide from my eyes?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Chan's figure appeared at the door. She made a face at Wu Hua and said, "Master, you are really amazing. I'm convinced. I'll leave now." As she said this, she stuck out her tongue at Li Yundong and then ran away. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought to himself, this little girl is getting more and more naughty. He coughed dryly and said to Wu Hua, "Now can you tell me? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."